On the first Sunday after Noah Mercer moved into the orchard cottage, 3 farmhands came down the muddy lane carrying his grandfather's plans. He watched them through a window that had been repaired with clear packing tape. Luis Ortega drove, leaning over the wheel of his faded blue pickup, as if bad posture might help it through the ruts. Marisol Vega sat beside him. Calvin Rusk rode in the bed with one hand braced against 2 dented tool chests, and the other resting on a long wooden box. Rainwater tapped into a saucepan behind Noah. He opened the door before they could knock. "If that box contains another repair estimate, throw it in the creek." "It contains paper," Calvin said, climbing down stiffly. "The tools are what we use when the paper starts lying." Marisol took 3 rolled bundles from the cab. Their edges were soft with age, bound in green twine Noah recognized from the packing barn. "Your grandpa kept these in the equipment room," she said. Noah looked at Luis. "Grant owns the equipment room now. That is why we removed them before Grant cleaned it." "Removed?" "Brought," Luis corrected. "It sounds friendlier." He lifted the wooden box and headed for the cottage as if Noah had already invited him in. "What are they?" Noah asked. Luis stopped on the crooked step. What Walter planned to do here. 6 days earlier, Grant had slid a contractor's estimate across the farmhouse table and told Noah the cottage was his. The total at the bottom was $68,420. Grant had circled it in blue ink. Beneath that, the contractor had added a demolition estimate of $14,800, which Grant had underlined twice. "Obviously, these are worst-case numbers," Grant said. He was still wearing the navy suit he had worn to their grandfather's funeral. He had taken off the tie and folded it neatly beside his coffee, as if grief were another meeting from which he had successfully adjourned. Denise Mercer sat at the head of the table, although it had always been Walter's chair. She kept touching the little gold cross at her throat and looking toward the sink, where one of Walter's chipped green mugs waited to be washed. Noah looked from the estimate to his mother. "You had somebody inspect it before we discussed who got what." "It's not an inspection," Denise said. "It's a preliminary assessment." Grant nodded. "We needed numbers. You needed numbers for the one thing you're giving me. No one is giving anyone anything." Grant smiled, patient and bloodless. "We're dividing assets." Outside, a gust moved through the bare orchard. The kitchen window rattled in its frame. Walter used to slap the glass with 2 fingers when it did that and say the house was trying to get his attention. The will divided the estate equally among Denise, Grant, and Noah after debts, but it did not slice the farm into tidy portions. Walter had apparently trusted his family to manage that among themselves. Noah had spent the previous week discovering how much damage could hide inside the phrase "among themselves." Grant had arrived from Grand Rapids with printed aerial photographs, debt summaries, soil maps, and colored tabs. Red meant Denise, blue meant Grant. Yellow meant Noah. There was very little yellow. Denise would receive the farmhouse and 12 acres around it. Grant would receive the packing barn, the equipment, and 41 acres of productive orchard. Noah would receive the old cottage and the 7 acres at the far eastern edge, where the ground tilted toward a creek and the trees grew in crooked rows planted before Grant was born. Grant called the division practical. Noah called it something else in his head. He rubbed his thumb along the contractor's total. The paper was warm from Grant's hand. "The roof leaks. We know. The chimney's split. It can be stabilized. The plumbing froze 2 winters ago." Grant spread his hands, which is reflected in the assessment. Noah almost laughed. The sound reached his throat but had nowhere decent to go. At the funeral that morning, Grant had delivered a graceful remembrance about Walter's work ethic. He told 43 people that his grandfather believed nothing worth having came easy. Noah had stood 6 feet away, staring at the clean soles of Grant's shoes and remembering how Walter used to complain that Grant parked on grass because he did not know the difference between a lawn and a field. Now Grant tapped the estimate. "You said you wanted a place. I said I couldn't afford another rent increase." "Exactly. This solves that. The place doesn't have heat. It has a wood stove. It has a hole where a wood stove used to be." Denise flinched. "Can we not do this today?" Noah turned to her. Her face looked older than it had the week before, smaller somehow, without Walter arguing with it. She had spent most of the funeral comforting other people. She had even comforted Grant when his voice broke during the speech. Noah's own grief had been treated like a heavy serving dish everyone assumed he was strong enough to keep holding. I'm not the one who brought paperwork to the funeral lunch, he said. That's unfair, she whispered. Grant leaned back. We're all tired. Noah looked at the colored map. The new Honeycrisp blocks alone are worth more than the cottage parcel. They also carry most of the operating debt and produce most of the income, when they produce. There was hail last year, in case you've forgotten. Noah had not forgotten. He had been outside at 2 in the morning, clearing shredded leaves from a drain, while Grant called from a hotel in Chicago and asked whether the storm had been material. Grant moved the map closer. I'm assuming the business risk. Mom is taking a house that needs work. You're getting land without a mortgage attached to it. With trees you called commercially useless. I said commercially marginal. You said we should push them over. That was one option. Denise pressed both palms flat on the table. Your grandfather has been buried for 3 hours. Silence entered the kitchen and sat with them. Noah looked toward the mudroom. Walter's work jacket still hung on its peg, brown canvas polished dark at the cuffs. Denise had insisted on leaving it there until after the funeral. Tomorrow, Noah suspected, it would become an item in a bag. He remembered helping Walter dress for a cardiology appointment the previous winter. Walter's fingers had been too swollen to work the buttons, and he had cursed each one personally. Noah had tried to make him laugh by asking whether the shirt had offended him. Everything offends you if you live with it long enough, Walter had said. Then he had looked past Noah, toward the orchard cottage barely visible beyond the trees. Doesn't mean you throw it away. At the time, Noah thought he was talking about the shirt. What did Grandpa say about the cottage? Noah asked. Grant glanced at Denise before answering. The glance was quick, but it was there. He didn't leave detailed instructions for every structure, Grant said. That wasn't my question. Denise began rotating her wedding ring. Noah had seen her do that whenever Walter asked whether she had called the insurance company or had merely meant to call it. He knew you liked the old place, she said. I boarded its windows. You were always out there, because he asked me to be. Grant sighed. Noah, nobody is claiming this is a palace. We tried to give you the part that made sense for your situation. What situation? That landed harder than Noah intended. Denise's eyes filled, not quite with tears, but with the preparation for them. Grant answered anyway. You need somewhere inexpensive. You know how to fix things. You've chosen a life where flexibility matters more than income. I chose to help Grandpa for 3 years. Yes, no one asked you to give up 3 years. Noah stared at him. Grant's expression changed, not regret exactly, but the recognition that he had stepped through rotten boards and could feel empty air beneath him. Denise said his name softly. Grant. What? We're supposed to make permanent decisions based on who spent the most hours here during the final illness? Is that the standard? No, Noah said. The standard is apparently who brought the nicest folders. Grant gathered the maps into a squared stack. His cheeks had gone red above his collar. I'm trying to keep the orchard intact by cutting off 7 acres. 7 acres that lose money. They didn't used to. Neither did a lot of things. Denise rose and carried Walter's mug from the sink to the table, then seemed unsure why she had done it. She held it against her stomach with both hands. Noah, she said, the cottage could be good for you. There it was. Good for you. The phrase used for bitter medicine. Smaller portions and jobs no one else wanted. She said it gently, which made it worse. You'd have privacy, she continued. Your own land. And you always said the old trees deserved another chance. Trees don't come with roofing shingles. We could help some. Grant looked at her. Mom, I said some. With what cash? Denise's mouth tightened. For a moment Noah saw the steel she usually kept hidden beneath anxious kindness. Do not discuss my cash as if I'm not sitting here. Grant looked away first. It surprised Noah enough that he nearly smiled. Denise caught the almost smile and returned something tired and crooked. Then her gaze dropped to the repair estimate, and the brief alliance vanished. I can't maintain the farmhouse and that cottage, she said. I just can't. Your father left enough things half-fixed before he left, and Walter kept every building because buildings had feelings. I don't have it in me anymore. Her honesty hurt more cleanly than Grant's sales pitch. Noah imagined the cottage as it had been when he was younger. White curtains in the windows, work boots lined along the porch, coffee strong enough to perfume the lane. Seasonal crews had stayed there during harvest. Walter sometimes joined them for cards after supper, and came home claiming Luis had cheated him out of $12. The place had not always been a ruin. Neglect had made it one slowly, one forgivable season at a time. "If I take it," Noah said, "the 7 acres come with it. All access rights from the east lane, water from the old well." Grant's eyebrows rose. "You've thought about this." "I've worked there. The well hasn't been tested." "Then put that in writing. We can. And I keep the small tractor." "No. The Ford's older than I am. It runs. Because Calvin and I rebuilt the transmission. It belongs to Orchard Operations." Noah looked at Denise. She closed her eyes for a moment. "Let him have the utility trailer." Grant began to object. "The trailer," she repeated. Noah glanced through the window at the orchard, row after gray row beneath the April sky. He knew which trees held water at their roots and which ones blossomed too early. He knew where Walter kept a coffee can of cotter pins and which ladder had a bad third rung. None of that knowledge appeared on Grant's maps. "All right," Noah said. Denise gripped the mug tighter. "You don't have to decide today." "Yes, he does," Grant said. "The estate timetable?" I said. "All right." The room went still. Grant pushed the agreement toward him. Noah read every line while his brother watched the clock. His name looked unfamiliar when he finally signed it, as if some more confident Noah had stepped briefly into the chair and made the decision for him. Grant exhaled and collected the papers. Later, while Noah carried folding chairs from the dining room, he heard voices through the open pantry door. Denise said, "I feel terrible," Grant answered quietly. "He'll be fine, and at least we won't be stuck paying to tear the place down." Noah stood in the hallway with 4 chairs pressed against his chest. The front legs trembled against one another, making a small wooden chatter. He waited for either of them to say something that changed the meaning. Neither did. That evening, he walked the half-mile to the cottage alone. The rain had not started yet, but the air held its metallic promise. The building waited beyond the oldest trees, roof bowed, porch leaning east. One upstairs window reflecting the last strip of daylight. Noah unlocked the swollen front door and put his shoulder into it. The cottage smelled of wet plaster, mouse droppings, and apples that had vanished years ago. In the kitchen, someone had left a single blue saucer on the windowsill. Walter's handwriting showed faintly through dust on the wall beside it. 3 measurements in pencil, a date, and an arrow pointing toward the floor. Noah rubbed the marks with his thumb. He had no idea what they meant. The arrow ended at a square no bigger than Noah's thumbnail. He crouched, expecting a loose floorboard or a mark beneath the baseboard. But there was only cracked linoleum and a dead beetle on its back. "Very helpful," he said. His voice traveled into the empty rooms and returned thinner. He slept in town that night because he still had 11 days on his room, and because owning a condemned-looking cottage did not require him to be stupid immediately. By morning, though, the landlady had set 2 flattened liquor boxes outside his door, with his name written on them. Mrs. Dombrowski did not drink enough whiskey to account for the boxes, which meant she had collected them for him. "Don't put books in the big one," she warned. "The bottom's unreliable. So am I. That's why I use tape." She was 72 and ran the boarding house with the suspicious efficiency of a prison warden who secretly wanted everyone rehabilitated. When Noah had told her he was inheriting a house, she had crossed herself, congratulated him, and asked whether it had gutters. This morning she stood in his doorway wearing slippers shaped like trout. "How bad?" she asked. "It has some structural personality. Roof?" "Mostly. Plumbing? Historically?" She stared at him. "It had plumbing," he clarified. Mrs. Dombrowski handed him an envelope containing most of his security deposit. She had subtracted $40 for a stain on the carpet that both of them knew had been there before he arrived. "You can keep the room until the 1st, she said, "if your historic plumbing gets ambitious." He thanked her and packed his clothes, 3 pans, Walter's old radio, and the small number of books that had followed him through 4 addresses. His life fit into the utility trailer with room for a washing machine he did not own. The trailer was waiting beside the packing barn when he arrived at the farm. Its left tire was low, and the wiring harness had been chewed by something with strong teeth and no respect for contracts. Calvin was beneath it on a rolling board, splicing the cable. "You don't have to do that," Noah said. Calvin's gray head appeared beside the hitch. "I'm aware. Grant tell you to?" "Grant told me to strip it for parts." Calvin disappeared again. Noah set down his boxes. "And you interpreted that as repair it for me. Age affects the hearing. Calvin was 63, broad through the chest, with hands that looked permanently closed around invisible wrenches. His right leg dragged slightly after an old combine accident. Walter had once built him a lower workbench rather than allow him to retire, a solution Calvin described as both thoughtful and insulting. "The wheel bearings are decent," Calvin said. "Deck's soft at the rear. Don't carry anything valuable back there. Everything I own is on the sidewalk in town. Then you're safe." Across the yard, Grant stood with Marisol beside a whiteboard Grant had mounted to the packing barn wall. They were discussing pruning assignments. Grant held a blue marker. Marisol had her arms folded. Noah recognized the posture. Marisol did not raise her voice when she disagreed. She made herself still and allowed the other person to hear how much noise he was making. Grant capped the marker when he noticed Noah. "There you are." It was 7:30. Noah had not officially started work until 8 in years, but Grant made the words sound like he had been waiting since dawn. "I'm moving today," Noah said. "I told Marisol." "You told me," Marisol said. "I told Grant." Grant glanced at the boxes. "I thought you'd need a week before staying out there." "So did the mice." "I'm serious. We need to talk about liability." Noah looked toward Calvin's boots beneath the trailer. "Is there any kind you're not thinking about? The cottage parcel is now separate from the business. Employees can't wander over there during paid hours." Marisol turned her face toward him. "Wander?" "I mean, perform unassigned work." "No one asked anyone to perform anything," Noah said. "Calvin is repairing orchard equipment. The trailer is mine." Grant blinked. The paperwork had been signed less than 24 hours ago, and he already seemed surprised by nouns he no longer controlled. Calvin rolled out, stood with a grunt, and handed Noah the repaired plug. "That'll hold until it doesn't." "Calvin," Grant said, "could I see you inside? If you look through the window." Grant's jaw tightened. Calvin gave Noah the smallest wink and limped toward the barn. Marisol took the blue marker from Grant and erased 3 names from the North Block list. "These people do not prune there today. You sprayed copper yesterday. The re-entry interval has passed. For the label minimum, the branches are wet, and 2 of them reported skin reactions last season. We're behind. The trees will forgive us. The contract won't." Noah hitched the trailer to his truck without looking at Grant, which required looking very carefully at everything else. "Noah," Grant called. "When you're done moving, I need you on the west irrigation line. I thought employees couldn't wander. The west line is company property." "So, am I working today or not?" Grant seemed offended by the question. "Of course you're working." Marisol turned from the whiteboard. "At what rate?" Her tone remained even, but Grant's ears reddened. "We'll discuss that privately. You set crew rates with me." "Noah isn't crew." The words crossed the yard with embarrassing clarity. Noah looked up from the hitch. "What am I?" Grant shoved the marker into his suit pocket. He had worn a suit again, a gray one this time, although the orchard office contained a metal desk, a dead moth, and no one worth impressing. "You've been helping, Grandpa," Grant said. The arrangement was informal. Payroll seemed to know about it. That doesn't make it permanent. Noah had earned $18 an hour without benefits, doing whatever work Walter could no longer do. It had never been enough to save much, but it was the closest thing he had to solid ground. "How temporary am I?" he asked. Grant looked toward Marisol and seemed to remember he had an audience. "We'll sit down this afternoon." Noah nodded once. He climbed into his truck and pulled away before the tremor in his hands could become visible. The utility trailer thumped over every rut along the east lane. The orchard cottage appeared and disappeared between trunks, as though reconsidering whether it wanted to be found. In daylight, the place was worse. 3 porch boards needed replacing before anything heavier than regret crossed them. Water had stained the upstairs ceiling. The kitchen faucet produced a cough of rust and 1 brown thread of liquid before going silent. Noah tested the wall switches out of habit. None worked. The electric service had been disconnected years earlier. He carried his mattress into the front room because the upstairs floor dipped near the landing. He set his pans in the kitchen, the radio on the windowsill, and Walter's battered red thermos beside it. The thermos made the room look occupied. Not habitable exactly, but claimed. By noon, he had swept 5 pounds of mouse evidence into a bucket and discovered a wasp nest in the linen closet. He found newspapers from 2009, a single rubber boot, 2 bent forks, and a deck of cards missing all 4 queens. Beneath the sink sat an empty glass jar labeled "Roof Nails" in Walter's handwriting. "That feels personal," Noah told it. The chimney occupied one wall of the front room. Its old stovepipe had been stuffed with a feed sack. When Noah pulled the sack free, soot dropped over his hair and shoulders. A knock came from the open door. Denise stood on the porch holding a paper grocery bag. She had changed out of her funeral clothes, but still wore the gold cross. Her gaze moved past him into the room. "Oh," she said. "You expected better? I remember it better." "That's the risk of remembering?" She stepped onto the bad porch board. "Left," Noah said sharply. She froze. "Put your foot left. That board's rotten." Denise shifted and entered with the stiff care of someone boarding a canoe. She placed the grocery bag on a crate. Inside were bread, cheese, canned soup, coffee, 2 apples from the supermarket, and Walter's green mug. Noah lifted it out. "You kept this yesterday. I thought you should have it." "Why?" "He always used it when you made breakfast." "He used every mug when I made breakfast." "I know." She rubbed soot from his cheek with her thumb before he could step back. It was an old gesture, intimate enough to make both of them uncomfortable. "You don't have power," she said. "I noticed. You can't stay here. I own it. Those aren't the same thing." Noah set the mug beside the thermos. "Grant's talking about changing my job." Denise looked genuinely surprised. "What do you mean?" "He said my work was an informal arrangement." "Walter paid you," Grant noticed. "I'll speak to him." "No. He listens to me." They both paused. Denise sighed. "Sometimes. If I have a job because you made him feel guilty, I don't have a job." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes wandered to the penciled marks by the kitchen wall. "What are those?" she asked. "Measurements, I think." Walter was forever measuring things he never fixed, like the cottage, like everything. She touched the date written beside the arrow. This was last October. Noah looked closer. He had noticed the numbers, not the date. Last October, Walter had been walking with a cane. Some mornings, the distance from the farmhouse to the barn left him breathless. Noah tried to picture him making the half-mile trip, entering this cold kitchen, and bending low enough to mark the wall. "Did he come out here?" Noah asked. "Not with me." Denise withdrew her hand. "I'm sorry about what you heard in the pantry." Noah stared at the blue saucer. "Grant was trying to make me feel better." "Did it work?" "No." The answer was plain enough that he looked at her. She gave the cottage another frightened survey. "Come to the house tonight. The guest room's made up. So you can feel less terrible?" "So? I can sleep." At least she had not disguised it as help. Noah almost respected that. "I'll think about it." "You say that when you won't." "I learned from you." Denise flinched, then surprised him by laughing. It came out rough and brief. Walter's mug sat between them. "I brought cleaning gloves," she said. "They're under the soup." They spent 2 hours scrubbing the kitchen. She complained about his choice of radio station, and he complained about her habit of using too much bleach. Neither mentioned Grant. When she left, the room smelled harsh but human. Grant never called about the afternoon meeting. The next morning, Noah reported at 7:30. His name was absent from the whiteboard. Grant offered him 6 hours replacing irrigation couplers at $15 an hour. No regular schedule guaranteed. Noah accepted because pride did not buy roofing felt. He accepted again Thursday, then spent Friday morning waiting for a call that came after noon. Grant needed him for 4 hours unloading fertilizer. Noah arrived to find 2 temporary workers already doing it. "Change of plan," Grant said. Noah drove away with $8 worth of gas missing from his tank. By Saturday night, he had moved fully into the cottage. A borrowed extension cord ran from an outlet in the old pump shed, with Grant's written permission, and powered 1 lamp and a hot plate. A saucepan caught the rain behind the sofa. Noah lay on his mattress listening to drops strike metal and calculated how many restaurant shifts it would take to buy roof patch, chimney mortar, and enough groceries to remain alive while installing both. Sunday morning brought steady rain. Just after 10, the faded blue pickup came down the lane. Now, Luis stood inside the cottage with the wooden box on Noah's crate, while Calvin set the tool chests beside the chimney. Marisol cleared a dry section of floor and placed the rolled papers there. "You said Walter planned to do something here," Noah said. Luis untied the green twine. "Many things. He could have mentioned one. He tried." Luis looked toward the pencil marks on the wall. "You were both stubborn men. It slowed communication." Marisol unrolled the first sheet and held its corners flat with 2 soup cans. The drawing showed the cottage from above, each room measured and labeled in Walter's blocky hand. Across the kitchen, a dotted line ran from the chimney to the exact place where Noah had found the penciled arrow. Beside it, Walter had written, "Ask Noah if his gravity idea works here." Noah read the sentence twice. "What gravity idea?" Marisol asked. He lowered himself to the floor. "I told him something," he said. "Last summer." I thought he wasn't listening. Luis looked down at the plans. "He listened slowly," he said. Noah had proposed using the slope behind the cottage to move wash water through a series of tanks without an electric pump. It had been one of those conversations Walter encouraged by refusing to say whether an idea was good or ridiculous. They had been sorting windfalls beneath the old Baldwin trees. Noah complained that half the fruit was being hauled to the commercial press at more cost than it was worth. Walter said pumps cost money. Noah pointed toward the hill and said gravity worked for free. Walter had grunted. That was all. "He drew it," Noah said. Calvin crouched beside him, his stiff leg angled out. "He drew everything. Man once drew me a new bracket instead of walking 10 feet to show me the old one. His knees hurt," Luis said. His mouth didn't. Marisol removed one soup can and carefully lifted the corner of the sheet. Several pages lay underneath. The first showed the cottage's existing plumbing. Another redrew the lower level, replacing a coal room and storage closet with an apple washing area. Arrows traced water from a holding tank outside, through 2 sinks, then downhill toward a gravel filtration bed. Noah ran a finger above the paper without touching it. This would need health department approval. "Yes," Marisol said. "And the foundation wall would need opening, yes." "And there isn't a press," Calvin tapped the wooden box. "Not in there, if that's what you're hoping." Noah looked at him. "What? You have the face of a man about to find a magical press." Luis opened the box. Inside were Walter's drafting rulers, a brass compass, several pencils sharpened with a knife, and 2 notebooks with black cloth covers. No cash. No key taped beneath the lid. No note saying that Walter had arranged everything. Noah was relieved, although he could not have explained why. A miracle would have made him suspicious. Luis handed him the first notebook. Walter's name was written inside, followed by the year. The entries were not a diary. They were lists of materials, crop yields, repair questions, names of apple varieties, and reminders so ordinary they hurt. Call Calvin Rebelt. Ask Denise where good towels went. Noah's soup too salty, but do not discourage. He shut the book. "You read these?" he asked. "No," Luis said. "Walter showed us the drawings, not the notebooks. Why didn't he show me?" Marisol met his eyes. Maybe he thought he was. She unrolled a second bundle. This one was a hand-drawn map of the 7 acres. Every tree had been marked with a number and a colored dot. Some rows carried names Noah knew: Baldwin, Northern Spy, Roxbury Russet, Golden Russet. Others had question marks where graphs had taken unevenly or labels had gone missing. "He made this recently?" Noah asked. "Over years," Luis said. "Kept changing it." Walter had recorded bloom dates, harvest windows, storage quality, and which trees showed signs of canker. The neatness deteriorated near the bottom of the page. Later, notes leaned uphill, written by a hand losing steadiness. Near the creek, a rectangle labeled "Winter Bench" occupied the footprint of an old shed. Beside it were the words "Paid repair work, pruners, crates, ladders." Marisol touched that line. He wanted steadier winter hours. For who? For people who work here. Noah looked toward the window. Rain silvered the old trees and gathered at the tips of their bare branches. "Grant knows about this?" "He knows Walter wanted to keep the old block," Luis said. "That's not what I asked." Luis's mouth shifted. Grant knows what Grant has allowed himself to hear. Calvin opened one of the tool chests and removed a short level. "Before we start building a cider kingdom, can we determine whether the house intends to remain vertical?" "We're not starting anything," Noah said. "Good. Kingdoms are expensive." They began with the porch. Calvin drove the point of a screwdriver into one post and buried it nearly to the handle. He did the same to a second, then sat back on his heels. "I have seen toast with more structural ambition. Can it be fixed? Everything can. That's what gets people in trouble." Luis examined the crawl space while Marisol walked the perimeter, photographing cracks with her phone. Noah followed Calvin through the rooms carrying a yellow pad. The list began with roof, porch supports, chimney stabilization, electrical service, well test, plumbing, 2 dangerous floor joists, and whatever had been living behind the upstairs wall. Something scratched while they stood there. Calvin added eviction. The humor helped until Noah counted the items. The contractor's figure no longer looked like an insult designed by Grant. It looked optimistic. "How much just to make one room safe?" he asked. Calvin took the pencil and divided the list into 3 sections. "Safe," he said, drawing a line. "Dry, fancy." He placed nearly everything under safe or dry. "Your standards are oppressive. My standards are why machinery has not eaten you." At the kitchen wall, Luis removed the loose baseboard beneath Walter's arrow. Behind it ran a vertical chase where an old pipe had once connected the attic cistern to the kitchen. "That's why he marked it," Noah said. Luis nodded. He thought the existing route could carry your new line. The discovery was small, a hollow strip inside a broken wall, but it changed the room. The measurements were no longer the wandering calculations of a sick old man. Walter had stood there looking at what existed and imagining what might still work. Noah returned to the plans. The 3rd bundle showed a roadside shed, storage racks, and a rough calendar of harvests. No business projections promised wealth. Walter had listed quantities in cautious pencil and crossed them out repeatedly. Beside one estimate he had written, "too much." Another said, "ask Marisol. She knows crew better." "You helped with this," Noah said. Marisol did not pretend otherwise. "Some? How much?" I told him his labor numbers were fantasy. He has numbers? She turned to a page near the back. Walter had calculated wages for pruning, picking, pressing, and winter maintenance. The totals were higher than Noah expected. He was going to pay all that. He wanted to. Wanting and paying are different activities. Noah glanced at Luis and Calvin. "And you came here to help me do it?" "No," Marisol said. The word embarrassed him more than it should have. She crouched so they were level. "We came because Walter's work belonged with the place he drew it for. We came because you should know he did not think this parcel was garbage." Noah looked down. "But we have jobs," she continued. "Luis helps his sister with her mortgage. Calvin has medical bills he claims are love letters. I enjoy electricity. We can give you today. Sometimes we can give advice. If this becomes work, you pay." "I would." "With what?" He opened his mouth. Marisol waited. The rain tapped steadily into the saucepan. Noah had $863 in the bank, an unreliable truck, an extension cord, and 4 restaurant books he had carried through multiple addresses as if owning recipes constituted a career. "I don't know yet," he said. "Good answer. It's not much of one. It is better than pretending." An engine approached outside, too smooth to be Luis's pickup. Grant's SUV stopped near the porch. He crossed the yard without an umbrella, his shoulders rising against the rain. When he stepped inside, he took in the plans, the open tool chests, and 4 pairs of muddy boots. "What's going on?" Calvin studied the ceiling. "Gravity appears operational." Grant ignored him, his gaze fixed on the orchard map. "Where did those come from?" "The equipment room," Luis said. "Those are farm records." "They're Walter's drawings," Noah said, "which were stored in a building that transferred to me." The room tightened. Luis remained still, but Marisol stood. "Walter gave me the box to keep safe last fall," Luis said. The drawings were inside. This was not exactly what he had said before. Noah glanced at him. Grant did too. "Then why was it in the equipment room?" "Because that is where I kept it safe." "You can't remove files whenever you feel like it." Luis's face stayed mild. "I removed my property, including the box Walter gave me. Then I brought it to Noah. If you would like to discuss it tomorrow during paid time, we can." Grant looked ready to continue, then seemed to realize he was arguing with 3 employees on a Sunday inside property he did not own. He turned to Noah. "The pump shed outlet is drawing power from the farm account. You gave written permission. For temporary residential use, not a construction crew. No power tools are running," Calvin said. "Sadly." "It's 1 lamp and a hot plate," Noah said. Grant glanced at the saucepan catching rain. Something like concern crossed his face and was quickly converted into annoyance. "You could stay at the farmhouse until this is sorted. Mom already offered. It's the sensible thing. You gave me a home, and now you're telling me not to live in it. I gave you an asset. No, you made me sign for the thing you wanted gone." Luis looked toward the window. Marisol did not. Calvin slowly put the level back into his chest. Grant lowered his voice. This isn't a performance. You came to my house. I came because Mom said half the crew was here. 3 people are not half the crew. That is not the point. Noah stepped around the plans. What is? For a second, Grant looked less like the man with the folders and more like the older brother who had once driven Noah to a dentist because Denise could not leave work. Tiredness showed beneath his eyes. The point is, I cannot run an orchard if everyone treats every decision like a referendum on Grandpa. No one mentioned you until you arrived, Marisol said. Grant looked at her as if she had betrayed an agreement she had never made. He wiped rain from his forehead. Luis, I need you in the North Block at 6 tomorrow. Marisol, we'll review assignments at 5:45. Calvin, the sprayer is leaking. It was leaking Friday, Calvin said. Then fix it Monday. Excellent management. Grant went to the door. On the porch, he looked back at Noah. The extension cord comes off the farm circuit at the end of the week. It was meant to get you settled, not support a business. What business? Grant's gaze dropped to Walter's drawings. Exactly, he said. After he left, Luis exhaled through his nose. You lied to him, Noah said. No. Walter gave me the box to keep safe. He did not specify which room. You made it sound like he gave it to you before he died. He did. Last fall. With the plans inside? Luis adjusted the cuff of his wet jacket. Some questions improved nothing. Noah almost pushed, then saw grief tighten the older man's mouth. Walter had trusted Luis with the box because Luis was present. That fact did not need polishing. They spent the afternoon covering the worst section of roof with a tarp Calvin had brought. Noah paid for fasteners and sealant from the hardware store. It was only $46, but handing over the cash made each screw feel consequential. Before leaving, Marisol gave him a photocopied list of licensed cider processors and inspection contacts. Information is free, she said. Calls are free until somebody answers. Calvin pointed at the porch. Do not fix that alone. I helped rebuild a transmission. A transmission does not collapse because you stood on it. Luis placed the wooden box beside Walter's thermos. Keep the plans dry. Noah looked at the tarp fluttering overhead. I'll add them to the list. When their truck disappeared between the trees, the cottage became quiet again. The quiet was different now. It contained measurements, wage estimates, harvest dates, and the names of people Walter had expected to matter. Noah heated soup on the hot plate and opened the second notebook. Halfway through, between an entry about scab resistance and a reminder to sharpen saws, Walter had written a phone number beside the words, Ellen, Lake House, Kitchen Needs Nights. Noah, too proud. Ask later. Noah stared at it until the soup began sticking to the pan. Then he picked up his phone and called. A woman answered on the 7th ring with, If this is about the freezer, kick the bottom left corner. Noah looked at the number in Walter's notebook. Is this Ellen? That depends on whether you're selling something. My name's Noah Mercer. The line went quiet except for the metallic clatter of a kitchen. Walter's Noah? He had never heard himself described that way. Yes. You finally calling about work? Apparently. What changed? He looked around the cottage at the open plans, the saucepan, and the lamp fed by an extension cord Grant intended to unplug. My housing costs went down. You sound like Walter when he was hiding a medical problem. He died last week. The clatter stopped. Oh, Ellen said. Noah closed his eyes. I'm sorry. I thought you knew. I knew his heart was bad. I didn't know it had made a decision. She drew a breath, held it, released it through her nose. I should have called him, she said. Noah had heard some version of that sentence from nearly everyone at the funeral. He had not yet found a useful response. What did Walter tell you? He asked. That you can run sauté without setting your sleeves on fire, produce, and you quit your last kitchen because the chef threw a ladle at a dishwasher. The ladle hit a wall. Walter said you hit the chef. I took the ladle away. That's less interesting. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Ellen laughed once. Come Tuesday at 4. Lake House Inn, kitchen entrance. Wear shoes you can ruin. Is that an interview? It's a shift. Interviews let people lie while seated. Before he could thank her, she hung up. The next morning, Grant offered him 5 hours clearing debris from the eastern ends of the commercial rows. The job paid $15 an hour. Noah calculated that $75 would cover groceries and the hardware store charge, with almost enough left for gasoline. He said yes. By 9, he had filled the utility trailer with rusted wire, cracked picking bins, and broken sections of irrigation pipe. Grant arrived on an orchard cart carrying a cordless drill and a stack of new aluminum row signs printed with numbers. "These go at every north-facing end," he said, centered, 4 feet high. Noah examined one. The old signs were cedar boards mounted to the first tree in each row. Walter had painted the variety names in white, then repainted them whenever weather softened the letters. Some had dates beneath the names. One read Jonathan, 1978, in handwriting Noah had known before he could read. "What's wrong with the old ones? The buyers don't care what cultivar was planted in 1978. They need lot numbers. You can put the numbers beside them. That looks cluttered. It's an orchard, not an airport." Grant's patience showed itself by becoming very slow. "Take the wooden markers down and load them with the debris." Noah looked at the trailer. "You want them dumped? They're rotting. Some are fine, then they'll become rotten later." A cold wind moved up the row, carrying the smell of wet earth and last year's apples. Noah rested the drill against his thigh. Grant glanced toward the road. "This is why regular scheduling is difficult." "What is?" "Every assignment becomes emotional. You asked me to throw away Grandpa's work 6 days after his funeral. I asked you to replace outdated signs. With signs nobody can read without a chart. That's how traceability works." Noah knew Grant was not entirely wrong. Walter's signs would not satisfy a produce auditor. But the aluminum numbers did not require the cedar boards to disappear. "Put them in the barn," Noah said. "I don't want more junk in the barn. Let me keep them." Grant's eyes narrowed. For what? That question did it. Not because Noah had an answer, but because Grant believed an object required an approved future before it deserved to escape the landfill. He handed back the drill. "I'm done." Grant did not take it. "With the signs?" "With day labor." "You need the money." "Probably." "Noah, this is childish. Then you should hire an adult." Grant's jaw moved. "You don't get to complain that I won't employ you and then walk off a job. I complained that you pretended I already had one." For 1 second, Grant looked wounded. It was so unexpected that Noah nearly apologized. Then Grant took the drill. "Fine," he said. "I'll have someone else finish." Noah unhitched the utility trailer, leaving the debris exactly where Grant had ordered it collected. As he walked toward his truck, the old signs watched from the ends of the rows. He made it to the cottage before realizing Grant had never paid him for the 3 hours. At 4 Tuesday, Noah entered the Lake House Inn through a steel door beneath a hand-painted sign that said, "Kitchen staff only." The dining room overlooked Lake Michigan and charged $32 for chicken, but the kitchen looked like every kitchen Noah remembered. Stainless steel, damp floor mats, onions sweating in hotel pans, and at least one refrigerator held shut by optimism. Ellen Price stood at the prep table breaking down salmon. She was in her late 50s, compact, with cropped silver hair and blue-framed glasses. She looked up once. "You're late." The wall clock said 3:53. "Walter said you were funny," Noah replied. "He lied about both of us. Aprons are there." A cook named Dev showed him the station while Ellen pretended not to watch. Dev had a narrow beard, a collection of burn scars on one forearm, and the calm voice of someone who had survived worse kitchens. "We get quiet, then everybody orders at once," he said. "Ellen believes this is a character-building experience." "I believe customers arrive hungry," Ellen called. The first tickets came at 5:15. Whitefish, steak, 2 pastas, 1 salmon, no butter, another salmon with extra butter, as if the dining room were settling a private argument. Noah's hands remembered faster than the rest of him. Pan, oil, fish, skin down. Check the potatoes, wipe the rim. Answer when Dev called. For 4 hours, nothing existed except heat, timing, and the tiny satisfactions of getting several difficult things ready at once. No inheritance, no roof. No brother turning history into debris. Near closing, Noah overcooked a whitefish fillet because he was scraping another pan. Ellen held it up. "You planning to roof with this?" "I was hoping to eat it. You could sand furniture with it." She tossed it into the waste container, then added, "Good recovery on table 12. The praise was so small and exact that he trusted it. At 11:30, she gave him a plate of meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans. They sat at the prep table while Dev mopped. Walter called me in January, Ellen said. Noah stopped chewing. He asked if I needed a night cook. I said I usually do because cooks are migratory and angry. He said you might call. He never told me. He said you wouldn't listen while you thought he needed you. Noah pushed gravy through the potatoes with his fork. Did he say when he planned to stop needing me? Ellen's expression softened, but not enough to become pity. No, he mostly complained about my cider. You make cider? I serve cider. The press outside Fenville makes it. Walter said it tasted like sweetened furniture polish. That sounds like him. It hurt my feelings because he was correct. She offered Noah 4 night shifts a week through spring, 5 once summer business began. The pay was $19 an hour plus a share of kitchen tips. It was the first number anyone had offered him lately that did not come attached to an apology. I need daylight hours free, he said, to fix your inherited mansion. He told you about that too? He said there was a cottage. He left out some adjectives. He also said you were trying to save old apples. I said they shouldn't be wasted. Same disease, early stage. Ellen stood and carried their plates to the sink. Don't mistake employment for a favor. You work, I pay. If you stop working, I stop paying. It keeps affection from damaging bookkeeping. Noah thought of Marisol asking what he intended to pay people with. When do I start? Ellen glanced at the ruined whitefish in the waste container. Technically, you started 4 hours ago. He drove home with $120 in cash because Ellen paid trial shifts at the end of the night. The cottage stood black among the trees. He sat in the truck and counted the bills twice, then tucked them into Walter's notebook beside the roof list. Friday afternoon, Grant disconnected the extension cord. He did not come to the cottage. He unplugged it at the pump shed, coiled it, and left it on Noah's porch with a note. Temporary permission expired. Noah read the note under the light of his phone. The power company would not reconnect the cottage until an electrician approved the old panel. The electrician who came Saturday opened it, made a low sound, and advised Noah not to touch anything. Can it be repaired? It can be replaced. How much? The electrician wrote $2,750 on the estimate, including service upgrades and permit fees. Noah added it to the stack beneath Grant's $68,420 assessment. For cooking, he bought a used camp stove from Mrs. Dombrowski's cousin and set it on a metal table outside. For light, he used 2 rechargeable lanterns, powering them at the restaurant during his shifts. The arrangement felt temporary in the morning and medieval by midnight. He worked at Lake House until close, slept 5 hours, then climbed onto the cottage roof with a roll of patching membrane. He watched repair videos on his phone and replayed every section involving words like fatal or catastrophic. Calvin found him there Wednesday morning. I told you not to fix the porch alone, Calvin called. This is the roof. That is not a defense. Noah climbed down. Calvin pointed to the rear corner, where one porch support had begun tilting away from the house. Wind shifted it. I wasn't on that side. Wind doesn't care where you were. Noah wiped roofing tar from his hands. What would you charge to shore it safely? Calvin's eyebrows rose. Money, Noah added. Not friendship, not grandpa, not coffee. Coffee remains negotiable. They settled on a 4-hour rate Noah could barely afford. Calvin returned with jacks, cribbing, and 2 lengths of salvaged oak from a shed dismantled years earlier. He made Noah do most of the lifting. You paying me to teach or work? Calvin asked. Which costs less? Learning, if you survive it? They raised the porch beams slowly. The cottage complained in creaks and pops. Noah's shoulders shook beneath the weight of the temporary brace. Easy, Calvin said. Old structures hate sudden improvement. By sunset, the porch stood level enough that a dropped wrench no longer rolled east. The new oak support looked raw beside the weathered boards, but it held. Noah paid Calvin in folded 20s at the kitchen table. Calvin counted them without embarrassment, put one back, and closed Noah's hand around it. We finished early. It was 4 hours. You spent 20 minutes making coffee. You drank it. Poorly. After Calvin left, Noah sat on the repaired step with Walter's second notebook. The old orchard spread downhill in front of him, branches black against a peach-colored sky. He had spent money that day instead of merely losing it. The difference was thin but real. In the notebook, Walter had drawn a small box beside the first row of trees. Inside it, he had written, "Start here, not everywhere." Noah looked from the page to the orchard. The first row contained 17 trees. 3 were dead, 2 leaned badly, the rest needed pruning before bloom. 17 was not 60 acres. 17 was a place to begin. Noah began with the nearest living tree, a baldwin whose trunk divided low and carried enough upright shoots to resemble a frightened porcupine. Walter's notebook said to remove dead wood first, then branches crossing inward, then stop before confidence became vandalism. Noah cut 1 dead limb and 3 crossing branches. He stepped back. The tree looked unchanged. He cut 6 more. A voice behind him said, "Are you pruning it or punishing it?" Marisol stood at the end of the row, in rubber boots and a red rain jacket. She carried a travel mug and the expression she usually reserved for unsafe ladders. "I'm opening the center. You are opening the entire tree. There's too much upright growth. There will be more if you keep cutting like that." Noah lowered the saw. "You came to encourage me? I came to see whether the tree needed protection." She walked around it, touching the fresh cuts with 1 gloved finger. On the south side, she bent a water sprout rather than cutting it. This one can become fruiting wood. It points straight up. Today, you tie it down, the angle changes. The tree believes it has reached somewhere and stops trying to conquer heaven. You're making that up. The tree does not care whether you believe me. She showed him where to attach twine without cutting the bark. Noah pulled the shoot too far, and Marisol slapped his hand away. Gently. "You cannot repair impatience by adding force." He glanced at her. "Is this still about the tree?" "It can be." They moved to the next baldwin. Its bark had split near an old pruning wound. Noah expected Marisol to condemn it, but she scraped the edge with her knife and found green tissue. "Alive," she said. "Productive?" Those are different questions. Walter's map marked the tree with a blue dot and the note, "Good flavor, bears light." Noah had almost skipped that line because it sounded like sentiment rather than data. Marisol studied the branches. Walter used fruit from this one in sauce. He made applesauce once. He talked about it for 3 years. It exploded. It became memorable. The kitchen ceiling had worn Walter's memorable sauce until Denise repainted it. Noah wrote "keep" beside the tree's number. By noon, they had examined all 17 trees. 3 were dead, as Walter's map predicted. One of the leaning trees could be cabled temporarily. The other had rotted through its main union and would come down in a strong wind. 9 needed moderate pruning. The rest needed restraint. Marisol drew symbols on Noah's yellow pad. "You cannot finish the whole row today." "Why not?" "Because after 4 hours, people stop seeing branches and start seeing obstacles. I see at least 4 obstacles now. You work tonight at 4, then stop at 1. He checked the time. "You've been here 3 hours. "Yes." "What's your rate?" "This is advice. You said if it became work, I pay. I also said information was free. You pruned 2 trees, 1.5. Your porcupine required intervention." Noah went inside, took $60 from the envelope beneath Walter's notebook, and brought it to her. Marisol looked at the bills without taking them. "It's not your full crew rate," he said. "I don't know what that is yet, but it's what I can pay. You need electricity. I need to know the true cost of this before I convince myself it's possible." Something in her face shifted. She accepted the money and counted it. "My independent rate is 28 an hour," she said. "This buys 2 hours and 8 minutes. I owe you 52 minutes. Keep them on account. I am not a bank." "Then sit down. I'll make coffee. Your coffee requires a stove on the porch. It builds character. Ellen Price says that." "You know Ellen?" "Everyone knows Ellen. She banned my cousin from Lake House for bringing his own hot sauce. He put it on whitefish. He put it on the tablecloth." Marisol drank the coffee, which consumed 19 minutes of her debt. Then she took Noah through the orchard map and circled the work that mattered before bloom. Disease control, removing mummified fruit, clearing suckers around trunks, checking the abandoned well before he designed anything that depended on water. "You need equipment," she said. "I have a saw. You have 7 acres. I'm starting with 17 trees." She studied him over the mug. "That is almost sensible." At the restaurant that night, Noah sent a steak to the dining room without its mushroom sauce and dropped a pan of green beans when Ellen called his name behind him. The pan hit the floor hard enough to turn every head in the kitchen. Ellen looked at the scattered beans. "Those escaping something?" "I didn't sleep much." "Did the beans." Dev swept them up while Noah replaced the side order. The mistake was small, but his hands felt slow afterward. He reached across a burner and scorched his wrist. Ellen caught his arm, pulled it beneath cold water, and held it there. "I'm fine. You're cooked from both directions. It's a little burn. I don't mean the burn." Orders continued coming. Ellen moved him to salads for the final hour, an act he experienced as humiliation until he nearly put blue cheese on a dairy-free ticket. After closing, she set a glass of water in front of him instead of meatloaf. "How many hours did you work before arriving?" "I pruned trees." "That was not a number." "About 6. "How many did you sleep?" "Enough." "That also wasn't a number." Dev passed carrying a bus tub. "He looks like 4. "Thank you," Noah said. "You're welcome." Ellen sat across from him. "I hired you because Walter said you were reliable. He did not say you were inexhaustible. I need to get the trees done before bloom. The trees waited 12 years. They weren't mine then. That doesn't mean they know there's a deadline now." Noah looked at the burn reddening beneath the water. "You can't come in unsafe," Ellen said. "I won't pay you to prove you're suffering beautifully." "I didn't ask you to." "No. You just showed up and made it everyone's problem." The directness stung because it resembled nothing Grant would say. Grant would call it professionalism and make a new schedule. Ellen called it a problem and expected him to solve it. "I'll sleep tomorrow," Noah said. "Before or after you climb something?" "Before." "Good. I dislike paperwork involving ladders." He slept until noon the next day and woke feeling guilty enough to understand Ellen's point. A laboratory in town tested water samples for $45. Noah sterilized an old canning jar, followed the collection instructions, and pumped the cottage well until the water ran mostly clear. The test came back with coliform bacteria. The woman on the phone told him not to drink it. "I wasn't planning to," he said. "Don't brush your teeth with it either. That feels personal." He added well disinfection and another test to Calvin's list. For drinking and cooking, he filled containers at Lake House after each shift. Ellen charged him 1 sarcastic comment per 5 gallons. The roof patch held through 2 days of rain. The porch stayed level. Those victories made the failed water test feel less like disaster and more like an item with a price. Then Denise arrived with 12 of Walter's row markers stacked in the back of her station wagon. Noah stared through the hatch. "What are you doing?" "Apparently stealing farm records." She wore gardening gloves and Walter's brown work jacket. The sleeves were too long, forcing her to roll the cuffs. Grant said they were dumped. They were beside the dumpster. "That's different." "Not to a dumpster." Denise looked toward the cottage, avoiding his face. "I saw the Jonathan sign. The cedar board lay on top, its white lettering faded but legible. Beneath the date, Walter had added a small painted apple because the name had not filled the board. "I remembered him making that one," she said. "He got white paint on the porch steps and blamed the cat." "We didn't have a cat." Noah lifted it carefully. "Grant's going to think I took them." I told him I did. That surprised him more than the signs. "How did that go?" "He said I was encouraging you." "Are you?" "I don't know." Denise pulled off one glove, finger by finger. "I'm trying not to throw away things just because I don't know what to do with them." She looked at the jacket as she said it. Noah understood. "You could have asked whether I wanted that." "I'm wearing it. It doesn't fit. It's a jacket, not a moral commitment." He nearly smiled. "He gave it to me when we rebuilt the pump. He gave you everything you ever left in the mud." They faced each other across the open hatch. "Take the signs," Denise said. "The jacket is under review." Together they carried the boards to the cottage. Denise had not seen the orchard plans spread across the kitchen table. She stopped when she noticed Walter's handwriting. He drew all this? With Luis and Marisol. Calvin knew some of it. "And you?" Noah showed her the note about his gravity idea. Denise traced the edge of the page but did not touch the ink. "He never told me." "He didn't tell me either. He told the farmhands. He worked with them. So did I once." The hurt in her voice was unexpected. Denise had kept the orchard books when Noah was younger, before his father left, and she took a full-time job at the county medical clinic. Walter never treated bookkeeping as real orchard work unless a bill was late. "Maybe he thought you were done with this place," Noah said. "Maybe I thought I was." She looked around the damaged kitchen, at the lantern, the camp stove visible through the window, and the plans weighted with soup cans. "What do you think this becomes?" she asked. Noah could have described the pressing room, the honor shed, the old varieties ripening one after another. Instead, he looked at the electrician's estimate on the crate. Dry would be nice. Denise laughed, but her eyes stayed on the plans. A vehicle stopped outside. Grant came up the path carrying the Jonathan Signs empty metal replacement. He saw the stack beside the porch and then saw Denise wearing Walter's jacket. For once, his irritation could not decide where to land. "Mom," he said, "you took all of them?" 12. There were 14. 2 were rotten. "You went through the debris pile?" I stood beside it. Very different. Grant looked at Noah. "You couldn't call me? I didn't know she was doing it." "That's true," Denise said. "You told me this morning you were going to the grocery store. I went there too." Grant pressed his lips together. The aluminum sign in his hand read N14. "I need the trailer tomorrow," he told Noah. "It's mine. I need to borrow it." Noah waited. Grant shifted his grip on the sign. "May I borrow it?" The request seemed to cost him. What for? Fertilizer delivery got moved up. One of the axle bearings on the flatbed is bad. Noah glanced at the cedar markers, then at his brother. "You can borrow it until 6, he said. "Bring it back empty." Grant nodded. He turned to leave, stopped, and looked toward the pruned row. The tied branches and clean trunks were visible from the cottage. "You cut too much off the first tree," he said. "Marisol mentioned that. The others look all right." It was not an apology. It was barely praise. Still, Noah watched him walk away carrying the numbered sign and wondered when Grant had learned enough to notice. Grant had learned trees because Walter once insisted he spend a summer scouting for disease before allowing him to use the farm truck. Noah remembered Grant at 19, sunburned and furious, carrying a magnifying lens through the rows. He had become good at spotting mites and scab lesions. Then college began, followed by internships, office work, and a vocabulary that made old knowledge sound unprofitable. The utility trailer returned at 7:20 the next evening. Noah heard it before he saw it, bouncing behind Grant's SUV, with the empty hitch chains striking metal. He came out of the cottage holding a lantern. "You said 6, I know." Grant backed the trailer into its usual place. The fertilizer bag split. "We had to clean it." Noah shone the lantern over the deck. It had been swept, although pale granules remained in the seams. A new jack wheel had been mounted on the tongue. "What's that?" "The old one was bent. It was bent when you borrowed it. It was bent when you gave me a deadline." Grant opened the SUV and removed a cardboard tray containing 2 covered plates. "Mom made pot roast. She assumed you haven't eaten. I work in a restaurant. She assumes they don't let you eat. They do." Grant handed him the tray anyway, then took an envelope from his jacket pocket. Inside was a check for $45. Noah looked at it. "What's this?" 3 hours Monday." "You noticed." "Payroll noticed. You are payroll," I noticed eventually. The check carried Grant's careful signature and a memo reading, "Debris clearing." Noah folded it once. "Thank you." Grant nodded toward the lantern. "How long until the electrician comes?" 2 weeks. I need half up front." "You have it?" "I will." Grant seemed about to offer something, then looked at the cottage and thought better of it. His help tended to arrive already shaped like control, and perhaps he knew it. "We signed the regional grocer contract," he said instead. "The one Grandpa thought was too large? He thought everything after 1996 was too large." "How many bushels?" Grant told him. Noah looked past his brother toward the dark orchard. "That's almost a perfect year number. We can source from 2 growers if we're short. At contract price, I've accounted for it." Grant's tone ended the conversation. He climbed into the SUV. "Thanks for the jack wheel," Noah said. It needed one. The answer was ordinary enough to feel like peace. 2 days later, Calvin sent Noah a photograph of a rusted machine frame lying beneath the lean-to behind the packing barn. The message beneath it read, "Your empire lacks this." Noah enlarged the picture. 2 steel uprights rose from a heavy base, joined by a corroded crossbar. A screw housing sat at the top. There were no racks, trays, motor, or controls. He texted back, "What is it?" Calvin replied, "What remains of a cider press." A second message followed. Grant ordered scrap pickup Monday. Noah went to the packing barn before his restaurant shift. Grant sat behind Walter's old metal desk, comparing invoices. He had replaced the dead moth with a printer, but had not removed Walter's coffee rings. "I want the press frame under the lean-to," Noah said. Grant looked up. The what? Calvin says it's part of an old rack and cloth press. That rusted gallows? I think so. It's scrap. How much? Grant set down his pen. You don't have electricity, but you're buying industrial equipment. I'll frame your financial advice and put it beside the demolition estimate. I'm asking a reasonable question. So am I. How much? Grant opened a spreadsheet, found the scrap company's quote, and did a calculation. At its approximate weight, $130. Noah had expected him to give it away. The disappointment embarrassed him. I'll give you $100. That is not how weight works. It's missing half its parts. Scrap metal doesn't care. Then let me take it in exchange for the new trailer jack. I bought the jack. For my trailer, which I improved after returning it late. Grant leaned back. $115, and you haul the rest of the scrap pile to the road before Monday. That's more work than $15. It's your press, part of a press. They settled at $110.50 the scrap pile. Grant printed a one-line receipt, signed it, and made Noah sign too. You know this will cost thousands to make operational, Grant said. I know it costs $110 to stop it becoming a toaster. Sentiment is an expensive way to select machinery. Noah folded the receipt. You wanted the row signs thrown away, and now I have uniform labels. They looked at each other across Walter's desk, each waiting for the other to admit his system of value was incomplete. Neither did. Calvin helped load the frame Saturday morning. Noah hired him for 2 hours and paid his independent rate, which Calvin announced as $25 because he did not have Marisol's management surcharge. I heard that, Marisol called from the barn doorway. You were meant to, Calvin said. The press frame weighed enough to question every choice that had led Noah to it. They used the orchard forklift to place it on the trailer, with Grant's permission and Calvin at the controls. Rust flaked onto the deck. What happened to the rest? Noah asked. Motor burned out, Calvin said. Walter removed it. Racks rotted. Trays got bent. Screw still turns if persuaded. With what? Heat, grease, blasphemy. Which costs least? Blasphemy, but results vary. They hauled the frame to the cottage and lowered it onto timbers beside the porch, because the lower level was not ready to receive anything heavier than a bucket. It looked absurd there, a piece of industrial skeleton beside a building held up by salvaged oak. Marisol walked around it once. You bought rust. I bought a press. You bought the shape where a press could happen. Calvin nodded approvingly. That's practically poetry. She ignored him. Do you know the licensing requirements? I have the list you gave me. Have you called? 2 places. And one sent me 12 pages. The other said, start with zoning. You look offended. I thought apples becoming liquid would involve more apples. Marisol touched the press frame. Walter's drawing is an idea. This is a project. Neither is a business. I know. No, you know the sentence. That is different. Noah's irritation rose. What do you want me to do? Wait until I can afford everything before I touch anything? I want you to decide what you can lose. The question sat between them. He had spent $110 on the frame, $50 on Calvin, and nearly that much fueling trips for the scrap. He still needed electricity. The trees required disease treatment. Lake House could reduce his shifts if business stayed slow. I can lose the press money, he said finally. Can you lose the cottage? No. Then do not borrow against it because a drawing made you feel chosen. Her precision hurt. Noah looked away. Marisol lowered her voice. Walter was hopeful. He was also wrong sometimes. I know that. Do you? He thought Grant would listen. Calvin became interested in a wrench. Marisol stared at Noah, then gave a small nod. Fair. The electrician arrived the following Wednesday. He removed the old panel, replaced charred wiring near the service entrance, and made Noah pay an additional $180 for a grounding problem that had not appeared in the estimate. When the power company connected service, Noah stood in the kitchen and switched on the overhead fixture. Nothing happened. The electrician removed the glass shade and found there was no bulb. Noah laughed so hard he had to sit on the crate. The electrician produced a bulb from his truck. Light filled the kitchen with a yellow glare that revealed dirt Denise's bleach had missed, peeling wallpaper, and a crack running from the window frame nearly to the ceiling. It was the most beautiful ugly room Noah had seen. He worked 4 nights at Lake House, slept until late morning, and limited orchard work to 4 focused hours. The change felt lazy for 3 days and sustainable on the 4th. He removed mummified fruit and dead branches from the first row, He disinfected the well, flushed it, and paid for a second test. The woman from the laboratory called while he was preparing onions at the restaurant. "Your water passed," she said. Noah leaned against the walk-in door. "Passed what?" "The bacterial test." "You're saying I can drink it?" "I'm saying the sample you brought contained no detectable coliform." "Could you say it like you're happy?" "I work in a laboratory." He drank from the cottage faucet that night. The water tasted faintly of iron and victory. Warm days coaxed green from the old trees. Tight buds opened into pink clusters, then white blossoms edged in rows. The first row bloomed unevenly, one tree nearly bare, and the next covered so thickly that its branches looked snowbound. Denise came down the lane, wearing Walter's jacket and carrying the Jonathan marker. "I decided," she said. "About the jacket?" "It's mine until I die. Then you can fight Grant for it. He owns suits. People become sentimental when death makes sentiment convenient." She helped Noah mount the marker beside the pruned row. It did not belong there botanically. The row was mostly Baldwin, but the board cedar had dried enough to split if they moved it repeatedly. "It can be a sign for the whole place," Denise said. "The whole place isn't Jonathan. Neither was the cat." They stood beneath the blossoms while bees moved above them, busy and indifferent. On the commercial side of the property, tractors passed through the newer rows. Grant had crews thinning early blooms according to the contract projections. His white aluminum signs flashed at the row ends. Noah's old marker leaned slightly even after he adjusted it. Denise stepped back. Walter would straighten that. Walter hung a kitchen cabinet using one screw and hope. He'd straighten this one. Noah reset the post. When he looked up, Louis stood at the edge of the lane on his way home. He did not approach. He simply lifted one hand toward the blossoms. Noah raised his hand in return. The first row was not saved. No fruit had set. The press was still rust beside the porch, and the cottage's new electrical panel had consumed almost everything Noah earned that month. But the trees were alive. For the moment, that was enough work completed. Enough lasted until the petals fell. Tiny apples appeared where the blossoms had been, green and hard, each cluster carrying 4 or 5 fruitlets crowded around a center apple. Noah stood beneath the first Baldwin with Walter's notebook, trying to decide whether abundance could look threatening. The note for that row read, "Thin hard or regret politely." He called Marisol. She arrived the following Sunday with a canvas picking bag and charged him her full independent rate. Noah wrote it into a ledger before they began. "You do not need a bag," he said. "They're the size of marbles. You'll get tired of bending. We're dropping them on the ground. You'll get tired of stepping on them." Marisol twisted 3 fruitlets from a cluster and left the largest one attached. 1 apple every 6 inches. That removes most of the crop. Yes. After I spent a month trying to keep it alive. The tree is alive. That is why it needs you to make an unpopular decision. Noah held a branch heavy with small fruit. Walter hated thinning. Walter hated waste he could see. He tolerated waste that happened slowly. They worked down the row, filling the canvas bag again and again. The tiny apples struck the bottom with soft taps. Noah had thought pruning felt destructive. Thinning was worse because every fruit looked like a possibility. By mid-morning, Marisol found crescent-shaped scars on several fruitlets. "Plum curculio," she said. "Bad? Bad if you are an apple. What do I do?" She asked what he had sprayed, and he admitted he had applied dormant oil and one carefully timed fungicide using a second-hand backpack sprayer. "That's all? That's what I could afford. Pests do not adjust their appetite to your budget." He glanced across the property line. Grant's sprayer moved through a new block, blowing a white mist beneath the leaves. "Could I pay the farm to spray these acres?" "You could ask." "Will he say yes?" "That is a separate question." Grant said yes, then named a price that included fuel, chemical, machine time, operator time, and a buffer for administrative overhead. "You added $40 to send me the invoice," Noah said. "I added the cost of keeping separate records. Your parcel is a different operation. You keep telling me. It matters for compliance." Grant spread the spray schedule across Walter's old desk. Every commercial block had been assigned the same program, with applications timed to the most demanding varieties. "You're spraying Golden Delicious and Honey Crisp together?" Noah asked. "We're consolidating passes. The north block stays wet longer. The products are labeled for both." "I didn't say they weren't." Grant capped his pen. Do you want me to spray your trees or critique mine? Noah looked at the rate again. It would cost nearly 3 restaurant shifts. I'll manage my own. That backpack won't cover 7 acres consistently. I'm covering 1 row. Grant's eyes flicked up. Still. Something about the answer unsettled him. Grant understood expansion. Limitation made him suspicious. All right, he said. But drift control is your responsibility on your side. Your sprayer creates the drift, and you own the adjacent parcel. They could have argued until harvest. Noah folded the quote and left. Marisol helped him choose a smaller treatment plan based on what was actually present in the row, rather than what might attack an entire commercial orchard. It still cost more than he wanted. He bought protective gear, measured carefully, and waited for a windless evening. After he finished, he found Grant watching from the lane. You missed the tops, Grant said. The tallest branches aren't carrying fruit. Disease won't ask permission. I'll prune those out next winter. Grant examined the first tree. You tied the water sprouts down. Marisol showed me. Grandpa used clothespins. He also fell off a ladder twice. 3 times. The correction came automatically. For a moment, they stood together beneath the leaves, remembering the same stubborn man. Then Grant's phone rang. His voice changed before he answered. Yes, Mr. Halpern, we're on schedule. He walked away speaking in assurances. Noah turned his attention to the cottage's lower level. The plans described a pressing room as if the stone-walled space merely needed sweeping. In reality, it contained a cracked coal bin, rotted shelving, mouse nests, and 6 decades of objects Walter had been unwilling to discard. Noah removed 3 broken chairs, a churn without a handle, 2 rusted bed frames, a crate of glass insulators, and enough empty jars to suggest an abandoned canning religion. Nothing he carried upstairs was valuable. Most of it was not even useful. He saved the insulators because their blue glass caught the light. The county food safety guide required washable surfaces, adequate drainage, protected lighting, pest control, and sinks arranged for specific tasks. Noah taped the 12-page packet to the kitchen wall beside Calvin's repair list. When Ellen visited after a lunch shift, she read it with her glasses pushed low on her nose. You need a hand-washing sink. There are 3 sinks in the drawing. Then one needs to do nothing except wash hands. That seems elitist. Hands are needy. She descended the lower stairs, inspected the stone walls, and rejected his suggestion that the old galvanized trough could serve as a wash tank. No, it doesn't leak. Neither does a gasoline can. Don't put cider in it. It would hold apples, not cider. It held pesticide 30 years ago. How do you know? Everything galvanized on a farm held pesticide at some point. That's a rule. Noah leaned against the doorway. Walter thought this could work. Walter was planning. Planning is where you write clean sinks on paper and let the future find plumbing. So, you think it's impossible. I think possible is an expensive word. Ellen scraped mortar from the floor with her shoe. Get the room dry. Make the stairs safe. Find out what an inspector would require before you buy equipment. And do not tell anyone I advised you, because I enjoy saying I told you so. Outside, she stopped beside the rusted press frame. That's cheerful. It's being rebuilt. It appears to be waiting for a hanging. Calvin got the screw moving. What will the racks cost? Noah told her. Ellen whistled. I can buy cider cheaper than your lumber. You said your cider tastes like furniture polish. It does, but it arrives in containers. She turned toward the orchard. The first row was visible beyond the Jonathan marker, its branches lighter after thinning. If you get licensed, and if the cider is good, I'll try it, she said. Try means taste. It does not mean buy. Understood. And if it tastes like Walter's sauce, I'll use it to strip paint. Calvin rebuilt the press in pieces. He cleaned the screw housing, replaced 2 bearings, and drew a new basket frame on the back of an envelope. Noah bought food-grade plastic racks second-hand from a retiring cider maker and drove 2 hours to collect them. The racks did not fit. Calvin measured them, measured the frame, and looked at Noah. Did you ask dimensions? I asked whether they were standard. Standard is what sellers call things after you've driven 2 hours. They modified the basket frame rather than resell the racks. The work consumed 6 evenings and twice the steel Calvin estimated. Noah paid every invoice, then ate staff meals at Lake House because his grocery money had become bolts. The press slowly acquired function. It gained a stainless collection pan, cloths Ellen approved, and a hand-cranked grinder mounted to a separate stand. It still sat outside beneath a tarp because the lower-level door was too narrow. "You planned that well," Marisol said. "The door is wider on Grandpa's drawing. Paper doors are excellent." Noah would have to remove the frame, widen the opening, and install a lintel before the press could enter. He added it to the list. Denise invited both sons to Sunday dinner in the farmhouse because, as she put it, she was tired of having 3 living family members and eating alone. Grant arrived 40 minutes late and spent the first 10 minutes on his phone in the mudroom. Noah could hear him saying words like deliverables and corrective allocation, while Denise carved chicken with more force than necessary. "He sleeps here twice a week," she said quietly. "The rest of the time, I don't know. He has an apartment. He has a sofa in Grand Rapids and shirts here. Maybe the shirts are running the orchard. Don't start." Grant entered as she said it. "Start what?" "Dinner," Denise said. They sat at Walter's table. His chair remained empty because Denise had moved herself to the side again. The place at the head held a basket of rolls. Grant ate quickly, barely tasting anything. His fingernails were dirty, a detail Noah had not seen in years. "How's the contract?" Noah asked. "Fine. You were on the phone with the buyer. They want updated pack-out projections." "Already?" "They plan." Denise passed the potatoes. No orchard talk. Both men looked at her. "What else would we talk about?" Grant asked. "Movies, weather, a neighbor's unattractive patio." "Which neighbor?" Noah asked. "Any of them. Be creative." For several minutes they discussed a stone patio, 3 houses down, that Denise claimed looked like a cemetery with chairs. Grant laughed despite himself. The sound made him look younger and more exhausted. Then Denise asked Noah about the press. Grant set down his fork. "You're actually rebuilding it? Calvin is? With what money?" "My job?" "What happens when you need a roof? The roof is patched. What happens when the patch fails?" "I put the press over my bed." Denise told him not to be smart. Grant rubbed his forehead. "I'm not attacking you," he said. "I'm watching you spend every dollar on a plan Grandpa never proved. He didn't get time. No one gets time. That's why you test ideas before committing resources. You committed 60 acres to a contract based on a perfect year." The words came out before Noah could soften them. Grant went still. Denise placed her fork beside her plate. "No orchard talk." Grant's face closed. "You don't know the financial structure. I know the yield history. You know old yield history. I was here last year. And I'm here now." The sentence was not a boast. It sounded closer to fear. Grant pushed back from the table and carried his plate to the sink, though he had not finished eating. Through the window, thunderheads were gathering above the western horizon. Noah followed him into the mudroom. "I'm not hoping you fail," he said. Grant took his jacket from the hook beside the empty place where Walter's had hung. "You just want me to admit you're right." "About what?" "That I should have stayed. That you mattered more because you did." Noah had no prepared answer because he had not known that was the argument Grant heard. "You did stay," he said. "You're here now. After the funeral." Grant opened the door. "Check the drainage swale below the north block," Noah said. "It was backing up last spring." Grant looked over his shoulder. "I had a crew clear it." "When?" "April." "Then it's probably fine." Rain began before dessert. 3 days later, Noah crossed the lane and saw water standing beneath the north block trees. Grass clippings and pruned branches had packed against the mouth of the drainage culvert. He called Grant. The call went to voicemail. Noah stood in the rain, looking at water creep around the trunks, and called again. On the third call, Grant answered. "I'm with the buyer. The north swale is blocked." A pause followed. In the background, someone continued speaking until Grant covered the phone. "How much water?" "It's around the first 2 rows. Marisol checked that culvert in April. Then it got blocked after April." "I'll send someone." "Send someone now." "I said I will." The call ended. Noah waited 5 minutes, watching the water spread. The culvert mouth lay beneath a tangle of branches and grass that had woven itself into a mat. Brown water pressed against it, carrying leaves in slow circles. He crossed the property line. The water reached halfway up his boots. He pulled at the nearest branch, but the mass held. Each piece had trapped another. He found a pruning hook in the equipment shed, returned, and began dragging debris away from the culvert. The first gap released a thin, fast stream. It struck his shin and nearly knocked him down. Noah widened his stance and worked from the side, hauling out armfuls of wet grass. Grant's SUV came down the row 15 minutes later, followed by Marisol in an orchard cart. "What are you doing in the water?" Grant shouted. "Improving your financial structure. Get out of there. The pressure's holding the branches in." Grant waded in without changing shoes. His polished brown boots disappeared beneath muddy water. Marisol stopped at the bank. "Both of you move upstream. If it releases while you are in front, you go through with it." Grant looked at the narrow culvert. "We're not going through that. Then you will be stuck against it, which is less dignified." They moved to the side. Noah hooked the largest limb, while Grant cut smaller branches with a folding saw. Neither spoke. Rain ran from Grant's hair into his collar. Mud streaked the knees of his good trousers. The debris shifted. "Back," Marisol said. Noah pulled once more. The mass tore free with a wet ripping sound, and the trapped water rushed into the culvert. A wave rolled past them, carrying twigs, grass, and one of Grant's new aluminum row signs. Grant lunged after it. "Let it go," Noah said. "It's N22. Then N22 is transferring operations." Grant laughed before he could stop himself. The water carried the sign into the drainage ditch, where it lodged against a rock. They spent another hour clearing the channel. When the flow settled, Grant stood in the mud, staring at a pile of freshly cut water sprouts and grass clippings. "This isn't April debris," he said. "No," Marisol replied. "Who dumped pruning waste here?" "The crew you told to clear row ends before the buyer tour. I told them to remove it. You told them to make the rows presentable." Grant wiped his face. "That does not mean block a culvert. It does when people have 90 minutes to finish 4 acres. He looked toward the draining rows. "Why didn't you tell me? I told you the schedule was too tight. That's not the same thing. It becomes the same thing when you do not want details." The words were not loud, but they changed the air. Grant glanced at Noah. "Could you give us a minute? I'm standing in runoff. Please." Noah left them beside the culvert. As he walked away, he heard Grant say, "I cannot have you contradicting me in front of crews." Marisol answered, "Then stop being wrong where crews can see." At the cottage, Noah stripped off his wet clothes and hung them from the repaired porch. Grant arrived after dark, carrying 2 pairs of boots, both coated in drying mud. "Mom won't let me enter the house like this." "Good management." Grant set Noah's boots beside the step. "Thank you for calling." "You mean the 3rd time?" "I was on a contract review. The trees were underwater. They were standing in water for an hour, not a week. You came." "Yes." Noah waited. Grant looked toward the press beneath its tarp. "I moved Marisol to inventory and documentation," he said. "You punished her. I changed her responsibilities. She kept your north block from flooding. You called me. Because she taught me to notice." Grant's face tightened. "This is what I mean. Every decision becomes evidence in a trial I didn't agree to attend. No one's trying you. You all look at me like Walter is standing behind my shoulder." Noah leaned against the porch post. He stood behind everybody's shoulder. It was irritating. Grant smiled faintly, then let it go. "The buyer increased the weekly delivery minimum," he said. "They're opening 2 more stores. Can you refuse?" "Not without losing the account." "That wasn't my question." Grant looked across the dark rows. "No." There it was again. Not arrogance, but fear wearing a pressed shirt. "You should check the north fruit for rot after this," Noah said. "We have a crop consultant. Ask him." Grant nodded once. "I will." He left the boots and walked back toward the farmhouse in his socks. The culvert incident did not improve operations. It made everyone more careful about where they complained. Marisol spent more hours inside the packing barn, entering chemical records and less time supervising crews. Grant called it strengthening compliance. She called it being promoted into a chair. She continued advising Noah on Sundays, but she watched the clock and billed every hour. He paid from an envelope marked trees, separate from the one marked house. When the tree envelope emptied, work stopped. That rule saved him from several ambitious mistakes. Walter's plans called for restoring all 7 acres in stages. Noah marked 31 trees for the first season, the original 17, 8 early-bearing trees near the creek, and 6 golden russets that Marisol believed could recover with modest work. Everything else received only mowing, disease removal where essential, and notes for later. Walter circled this entire block, Noah said. Walter had imaginary money, Marisol replied. He wrote labor costs. He wrote them after I embarrassed him. Noah smiled. You embarrassed a man with heart failure? I spoke gently. The early trees produced small yellow apples by late July. Their skins bruised if Noah looked at them too firmly, and the flesh turned soft within days. Walter's notebook identified them as yellow transparent and added, "Sauce, early cider, don't pretend they store." Noah picked 4 bushels with Luis on a Sunday morning. He paid him $25 an hour. "You are overpaying," Luis said. "That's Calvin's rate." Calvin complains more. It raises his value. They carried the apples to the cottage and washed them in food-grade tubs using water from the newly cleared well. The pressing room still lacked finished walls and an approved floor, so the press remained for private testing only. Calvin had widened the lower doorway and installed an oak lintel. The rebuilt press now stood inside on its stainless pan. Its mismatched racks gave it the look of a machine assembled from several generations' opinions. Ellen arrived with 2 empty glass jugs and no promise to be kind. "You sanitized this?" she asked. "Twice." "The grinder?" "Yes." "The cloths?" "Yes." "Your hands?" "Go home." They fed the first apples into the hand-cranked grinder. Pulp dropped into the lined basket in uneven clumps. Noah folded the cloth, placed a rack above it, and added another layer. Calvin turned the press screw. It resisted, squealed, then lowered. The first liquid ran brown. Everyone stared. "That looks unsafe," Ellen said. "It's oxidation," Noah said quickly. "The fruit sat after grinding. You spent all that money to make swamp water." The next stream ran lighter, amber beneath the work light. It struck the collection pan and flowed into the sanitized bucket. The room filled with the sharp green smell of crushed apples. Luis leaned against the stone wall. Walter wanted to see this. Noah watched juice thread from the cloth. He should have started sooner. He thought there was time. No one answered that. They pressed less than 5 gallons. The pomace came out too wet, which meant the rack spacing needed adjustment. Apple mash escaped from one cloth. The grinder handle loosened twice. Each problem went into Noah's ledger. Ellen poured cider through a fine strainer and tasted it. Her face revealed nothing. "Well?" Noah asked. She took another sip. "It does not taste like furniture polish. Put that on the menu. It's thin, very tart, needs blending with something sweeter. We have golden russets later, if they ripen." Luis poured himself half a cup. Calvin did the same. Marisol arrived near the end, read the sanitation checklist before accepting any, then drank standing beside Walter's gravity flow drawing. The cider was not ready to sell. The room was not licensed. The press needed alterations. Still, the 5 of them finished the first jug on the porch while evening light settled over the orchard. Noah poured the final cup into Walter's green mug. He took one swallow. The cider tasted bright, sour, and alive enough to make his jaw ache. "Too tart," Calvin said. "Walter would have added sugar," Denise said from the path. They turned. She had come down from the farmhouse in Walter's jacket, carrying a covered dish. "He would not," Noah said. "He put sugar on grapefruit. Grapefruit deserves it." Denise tried the cider and puckered. "Needs sugar." Ellen pointed at her. "Thank you." They ate Denise's cornbread with the second jug. Conversation moved around Walter instead of stopping at him. Luis told the story of the $12 card game. Calvin accused him again of cheating. Denise revealed that Walter had known and kept returning because losing $12 bought him an excuse to stay. The cottage porch held. When Grant's SUV passed on the main lane, it slowed but did not turn in. The golden russets ripened through August. They were rough-skinned and dense, their sweetness hidden behind acid. Noah pressed test batches with the early apples and delivered samples to Lake House in unmarked jugs. Ellen adjusted the blend by taste, rejecting 3 and circling the 4th ratio on a kitchen ticket. By then, fruit on the commercial side had begun showing shallow brown lesions. Grant's crop consultant called it manageable bitter rot and revised the spray recommendations. Grant consolidated the new treatments across blocks. Marisol objected that the older Gala block needed different timing from the North Honeycrisp. Grant told her the labels permitted both, and the labor schedule did not. At the cottage, Noah stood over Walter's map and listened to the sprayer operating after sunset. The Weather Service warned of a late summer front moving across Lake Michigan. Heavy rain, damaging wind, possible hail. Noah checked his tarp, braces, and roof patch. He tied the young replacement limbs to support stakes and removed loose tools from the orchard. Across the lane, commercial trees carried more fruit than their branches should have held. Thinning had been reduced after Grant increased the delivery projections. Noah called him. "What now?" Grant asked. The forecast changed. "I know. Those north rows need props. We're working on it. Do you have enough?" Silence. Then Grant said, "Do you?" "6," Noah said. "6 props total?" "Yes." Grant exhaled. "I need 20. Then you need 14. Can you bring yours?" Noah looked at the old trees outside his kitchen window. The golden russets bent beneath fruit that would not be ready for another 2 weeks. He had built the supports from scrap lumber and padded each fork with sections of hose. "I can bring 4. What about your trees? I'll keep 2 under the worst limbs. 4 won't do much." "4 is what I have." Grant was quiet. "Bring them to N-18. Noah almost asked him to say please. The sky over the lake had turned the color of bruised steel, and there was no time to invoice his brother for manners. He loaded the props into the utility trailer. The north block was already moving in the wind when he arrived. Leaves showed their pale undersides. Grant, Luis, and 5 crew members were lifting overloaded limbs while Marisol directed placement. Calvin drove the orchard forklift with a pallet of stakes and lumber. "I thought you moved her into a chair," Noah shouted to Grant. "She escaped." Marisol pointed to a low Honeycrisp limb. "Prop there. Not the end. The weight is inside." Noah and Grant raised it together. The branch fought them, fruit knocking against their shoulders. They set the wooden fork beneath it and drove the base into wet ground. "Next row," Grant said. A phone alert sounded from 3 pockets at once. The first rain arrived horizontally. They worked until lightning cracked close enough for Calvin to lower the forklift and shout that everyone was done. Grant argued for another row. Marisol stepped in front of him. "You can lose apples or people," she said. "Choose quickly." The crew ran for the packing barn. Noah looked east toward his cottage. Through the rain, the old orchard was a dark blur. "My roof," he said. Grant grabbed his arm. "Wait for the lightning to pass. I have a tarp over half of it, and a truck made of metal." Another flash lit the rows white. They waited 8 minutes beneath the barn overhang. It felt like an hour. Wind drove rain into the open bays, rolling empty picking bins across the concrete. Somewhere outside, wood cracked with a sound like a rifle shot. When the thunder moved farther inland, Noah ran to his truck. The east lane had become a channel. The trailer swung behind him, its empty deck skidding in mud. He left it near the well and crossed the last 50 yards on foot because a Baldwin limb had fallen across the lane. The cottage porch was still standing. The roof was not. A section above the front room had lifted at the edge, tearing the patching membrane free. Water poured through the ceiling near Noah's mattress. The saucepan behind the sofa had overflowed and rolled onto its side, suddenly irrelevant. He dragged the mattress toward the kitchen. Plaster struck the floor behind him. The overhead light flickered. Noah shut off the main breaker. The sound changed when the power died. Rain, wind, branches scraping siding, water striking every object he had carried into the room. He pulled plastic sheeting over the plans and Walter's notebooks, then used 2 buckets, the saucepan, and Ellen's empty cider jug to catch what he could. A branch hit the upstairs window. Glass shattered. "Fine," Noah yelled into the dark. "Anything else?" The cottage answered with a groan that traveled through the rafters. He spent the rest of the storm in the kitchen doorway, wearing a raincoat, moving buckets when leaks changed position. The new electrical panel stayed dry. The press room remained untouched. Water spread across the front room floor, soaking the rug misses. Dombrowski had given him and the bottom 2 boxes of books. At dawn, the wind stopped. The orchard looked ashamed of itself. Apples covered the ground. Some lay intact in wet grass. Others had split on branches or burst when they hit stones. Leaves plastered the lane. One of the 31 trees had lost half its crown, and the leaning Baldwin Marisol had hoped to cable was down completely, roots raised in a wall of mud. Noah walked the rows without writing anything. He counted because counting gave grief edges. 43% of the fruit was down in the worked sections, perhaps more where branches had broken. Almost every apple carried a bruise or puncture. The fruit still hanging would need careful inspection. 2 weeks. The golden russets had needed 2 more weeks. At the commercial orchard, chainsaws started by 7. Grant had lost limbs throughout the north block, and hail had marked much of the fruit. The newer trees remained upright, but their dense crop had become their weakness. Several trunks split at the central leader. Noah's phone rang while he stood beside the fallen Baldwin. Ellen asked, "Are you alive?" Debatable. How's the house? Less roof-shaped. The trees? He looked at the ground. I won't make my shift. I did not ask about my shift. I know. Dev can cover tonight. Take tomorrow too. I need the hours. You need a ceiling. After she hung up, Noah found Walter's notebook beneath the plastic. The pages were dry. He turned to the golden russet entries, although he did not know what he expected the dead man to say. A note in the margin read, "Wind drops, press. Same day if clean. Bruised fruit doesn't wait for pride." Noah shut the book. The press room was not licensed. He could process fruit for himself, test batches, perhaps freeze juice at Lake House with Ellen's permission. He could not sell it. Even if he could, 4 bushels had consumed most of a Sunday. Hundreds of bushels lay beneath the trees. He picked up one apple, wiped it against his shirt, and bit into the unbruised side. The flesh was still starchy. Acid tightened his jaw. Too early. By noon, the contractor who had written Grant's original assessment stood in the front room, looking through the torn ceiling. The temporary patch failed at the old seam, he said. Noah resisted explaining that temporary things were known to do that. The new estimate for emergency roof work was $7,900. Full replacement remained far beyond reach. The contractor could cover the damaged section with heavier membrane for $800, but there would be no guarantee through winter. Noah had $412 after upcoming bills. Grant came down that afternoon in work clothes, carrying a chainsaw and a first aid kit. "What happened?" Noah asked. "Mom told me to bring the kit. Did she think I'd cut myself after the storm?" "She believes bad luck travels in groups." Grant inspected the roof from the yard, then walked through the orchard. He did not criticize the pruning or the supports. At the fallen Baldwin, he knelt and scraped bark near the roots. This one was gone anyway, he said. Marisol thought it had time. So did Grandpa. Noah looked at him. Grant lowered his eyes. "Sorry, they cut damaged limbs together for an hour." Grant worked well with a saw. He anticipated the branch's movement, made clean relief cuts, and kept Noah out of the drop zone. When they stopped, sweat had darkened both their shirts despite the cool air. "I could buy the parcel," Grant said. Noah thought he had misheard him over the chainsaw ringing in his ears. "What?" "The cottage and 7 acres. I'd fold them back into the farm." "With what money? We still have a line for capital acquisitions." "You're short on the contract. This would be separate." Noah set down the saw. "You gave it to me because it loses money. I'm offering you a way out because you can't cover the roof." "How much?" Grant named a figure. It was more money than Noah had ever possessed. It was also less than the value of 7 acres of Michigan farmland without a ruined building on it. Grant explained that demolition, tree removal, and access limitations reduced the parcel's market value. His tone was careful, almost apologetic. "What would you do with it?" "Remove the cottage eventually, replant the block when cash allows." "With Honeycrisp? Maybe a club variety. The press? Sell it. It costs more to rebuild than it's worth. Then scrap it." Noah stared at the bruised apples surrounding their boots. Grant wiped the chainsaw blade with a rag. "This isn't revenge, Noah. I'm not trying to take something from you. You already didn't want it. I don't want you destroying yourself to prove we were wrong." The words landed because they contained concern. That made them harder to reject. "If I say yes, I can advance earnest money once we sign an agreement. Enough to get you into an apartment immediately." Noah pictured electricity that did not require inspection, a roof owned by someone else, evenings spent sleeping before work. He pictured Grant's equipment pushing down the cottage walls, the Jonathan sign pulled from the ground, Walter's drawings rolled into a closet because no place remained for them to describe. "I need to think." "You should." Grant did not pressure him. He took the first aid kit back to the farmhouse and left Noah with the offer. That night, Noah slept on the kitchen floor beneath the table. The plans hung above him in plastic, their pencil lines dim through condensation. He could not make numbers behave. Every calculation ended at the same place. Keeping the cottage required money he did not have. Saving the dropped crop required labor he could not pay for. Refusing Grant would not make the roof whole. Before dawn, Noah placed Walter's notebooks inside the wooden box and retied the plans with green twine. He was carrying the first bundle toward his truck when headlights appeared between the trees. Luis's blue pickup came down the lane, followed by Marisol's car and Calvin's battered van. Ellen's kitchen truck brought up the rear. Luis stepped out wearing rubber boots. He looked at the plans in Noah's arms, then at the apples covering the ground. "You are putting those somewhere dry?" he asked. "I might be putting everything somewhere dry." Marisol opened her trunk. It was packed with picking bags. Calvin's van held empty crates. Ellen climbed from the kitchen truck carrying stacks of food-grade tubs. Noah stared at them. "I can't pay a crew." "We know," Marisol said. "I'm serious. So am I. We can give you this morning. We have choices about our own time. Grant needs everyone in the North Block. We start there at 10, Louise said. "That gives us 3 hours," Calvin added. 2 if you continue discussing it. Ellen handed Noah a pair of gloves. "Lake House has freezer space for juice. Not infinite space, so do not become inspired." Noah looked at the boxes, tubs, bags, and 4 adults waiting for him to decide whether help could be accepted without becoming charity. "What about the roof?" he asked. Calvin glanced up. "Ugly? I know. One disaster at a time." Marisol slung a picking bag over her shoulder. "Clean fruit only. No ground contact with rot. Separate punctures from bruises. We process today." Noah set Walter's plans back inside the cottage. Then he picked up the first crate. They sorted in the grass while sunrise turned every wet apple bright. Marisol established 3 categories: clean bruises, punctures that could be trimmed immediately, and compost. Calvin argued that one apple she rejected had excellent character. She cut it open and showed him brown flesh around the core. "Dead character," she said. Louise moved steadily between trees, filling picking bags and emptying them into padded crates. Ellen drove each full load to the cottage, where Noah washed the fruit in food-grade tubs. They did not use apples that had landed in standing water or touched visible rot. Even with strict sorting, fruit accumulated faster than the grinder could take it. At 8:30, Grant's orchard cart appeared at the lane. He stopped beside the Jonathan marker and surveyed the makeshift crew. "You're due in the North Block at 10, he said to Marisol. She checked her watch. "It is 8:30. I know what time it is." "Then we agree." Grant looked at Louise, then Calvin. "All of you?" "We have our own hours," Louise said. "This crop can't be sold." Noah lifted a crate onto the wash table. "Not as whole apples. You're not licensed to sell cider." "I know." Grant glanced toward the cottage, where the press screw turned beneath Calvin's hand. Juice ran into a lidded bucket through a clean hose. "What are you doing with it? Freezing it at Lake House until I know what I can legally do. You don't have enough cold storage, neither do you." The answer landed badly. Grant's refrigeration problems were not public, but Calvin's silence confirmed more than Noah intended. Grant looked at the fallen fruit, then at the commercial rows beyond the lane. "I need my supervisors at 10. "They'll be there," Noah said. Grant's gaze rested on him a second longer. "We should finish our conversation tonight." "The answer's no. You haven't seen anything in writing." "I don't need to. You said you would think." "I did." Grant's mouth tightened. "This morning changed your financial position?" "No." "Then what changed?" Noah looked around at Louise carrying a full bag, Marisol sorting fruit on her knees, Calvin adjusting the press racks, and Ellen labeling buckets with blue tape. "I found out what 3 hours can do." Grant followed his gaze. For a moment his face showed something Noah could not name. Envy, perhaps, or the old loneliness of arriving after everyone else had learned the task. "At 10, he said again. They left for the North Block at 9:57. Ellen remained. Dev came in at noon, having volunteered before his dinner shift, and ran the grinder while Noah loaded racks. The press worked for 11 hours with stops to clean, tighten bolts, and replace a cloth that tore near the seam. The yield was poor because the fruit was underripe. The juice was fiercely tart. Ellen tasted every 4th bucket and directed Noah to blend sweeter yellow, transparent cider from the freezer with the golden russet pressings. "Still sharp," she said. "It's not finished, neither is your roof, but rain has opinions." They filled every container Lake House could spare. Ellen stored the buckets in the restaurant's walk-in freezer, labeling them "not stock, Noah's questionable apples." "I pay for freezer space," Noah said. "You can wash the hood filters. That's worth more than freezer space. Then wash them badly." At midnight, he returned to the cottage and found Denise asleep at the kitchen table. She had placed pots beneath the active leaks and spread his wet books open near a fan. Walter's work jacket hung over the chair. "You have a farmhouse," he said softly. She lifted her head. A page crease marked one cheek. You have my pots. They climbed the narrow stairs with lanterns. The storm had broken the window and torn plaster from the front room ceiling, but most of the rafters remained sound. Denise stood beneath the hole looking upward. I have savings, she said. No, I didn't say how much. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. You took a farmhouse with its own repairs, and a share of Walter's accounts, which isn't roof money for me. Why? Because Grant's folders didn't color it yellow? Noah turned toward her. Denise folded her arms. I agreed to this division. I heard the estimate. I told myself you could fix things because that was easier than admitting I wanted the safest part. You don't have to pay a guilt tax. I'm not offering to pay for the roof. I'm offering to lend you $800 for the temporary repair, in writing, with monthly payments. You want interest? I raised 2 sons. I've suffered enough. Despite himself, he laughed. She looked through the broken window at the old orchard. I don't understand the cider. I don't know why anyone would pay for apples that make their face hurt. But I understand rain coming through a ceiling. Noah accepted the loan. Calvin helped install the heavier membrane, charging for his hours and refusing to work until Noah produced a safety harness. They sealed the broken upstairs window with plywood and rebuilt the damaged roof edge. It was not a winter solution. It gave Noah time. The cider room required 3 changes before the county inspector would approve direct sales. A dedicated hand sink, washable wall covering behind the processing area, and a sealed gap where the old coal chute entered the stone foundation. The inspector also required process records, sanitation logs, and warning labels because Noah planned to sell unpasteurized cider. None of the corrections was dramatic. Each consumed money. Noah installed the wall panels himself, swearing at every uneven stone. A licensed plumber connected the sink and charged more for 2 hours than Noah earned in 2 restaurant shifts. Calvin fabricated a cover for the coal chute. Ellen reviewed the sanitation plan and crossed out Noah's phrase, clean as needed. Needed is not a schedule. It's needed when it's dirty. It's needed before it's dirty. She rewrote the line to require cleaning before processing, every 4 hours during use, and at shutdown. The second inspection lasted 41 minutes. The inspector checked water temperature, watched Noah wash his hands, examined the cider cloth storage, and asked where finished jugs would be held. Noah showed her the refrigerator he had bought, used from a church kitchen. Calvin had replaced its thermostat, and a recording thermometer hung inside. The inspector signed the approval with 2 corrections Noah had to complete before the next processing day. Noah waited until her car disappeared before sitting on the lower step. He had expected triumph. What came instead was terror with paperwork. Approval meant he could sell. It did not mean anyone would buy. The first batch used storm fruit that had been pressed and frozen under clean conditions, then thawed under refrigeration and blended with cider from apples still harvested from the trees. Noah followed the process Ellen and the inspector had reviewed. He discarded 2 buckets that showed swollen lids, though losing them felt like pouring wages down a drain. The final blend was cloudy amber, tart at first and honeyed at the end. Ellen tasted it in the lake house kitchen. She held the cup toward Dev. Try this. Dev drank. Tastes like an apple, arguing. Who wins? Noah asked. The apple. Ellen ordered 10 gallons for the restaurant. Not 30, as Noah had privately hoped. 10. You said you would try it, he reminded her. I tried it. Now I'm buying 10. At wholesale? At a price that allows me to resell without declaring bankruptcy. They negotiated until Dev left the room. Noah built the roadside stand from lumber, salvaged from the collapsed shed near the creek. Walter's plan showed an enclosed honor shed with bins, a locking cash slot, and a broad roof. Noah could afford a table, a canopy, and a painted sign. Denise painted Mercer Cottage Orchard in Walter's block lettering. The result was imperfect. Her R leaned backward and the second T in Cottage sat too low. Do you want me to fix it? She asked. No. You hesitated. I was admiring the T liar. They mounted the sign beside the Jonathan marker. Noah priced cider with a deposit for returnable half-gallon glass jugs. He also put out bags of sound apples from the remaining crop, each labeled by variety with a short description copied from Walter's notes. Baldwin, firm, tart, good for pie, better after a week. Golden russet, ugly on purpose. Ellen objected to the second description and then admitted it would sell. For the first hour, no one stopped. Noah rearranged the jugs 3 times. He moved the cash box. He checked the canopy. A pickup slowed, and he stood too quickly, frightening the driver into accelerating. At 11:15, Mrs. Dombrowski arrived in a sedan driven by her cousin. She bought 1 jug, refused to pay the deposit because she had supplied Noah's camp stove, and returned 20 minutes later with 2 empty liquor boxes full of clean glass jars. "These are not approved containers," Noah said, "then admire them." By noon, 4 lake house customers had come down the lane after seeing the cider listed on Ellen's chalkboard. Luis's sister bought apples. The electrician returned for 2 jugs and reminded Noah that the final half of his bill remained due. Denise sat behind the table while Noah carried crates, telling strangers the roof story in more detail than he preferred. The first day sold 23 gallons and 12 bags of apples. After the cost of jugs, labels, ingredients, taxes, Ellen's freezer space, and Denise's roof payment, the profit was modest. Noah wrote the number in his ledger twice because it was real. Sales continued on weekends. Some days were slow. Rain ruined 1 stack of labels. A customer returned cider claiming it had fermented. Noah refunded the purchase and tightened his refrigeration checks. Returned jugs arrived dirty, chipped, or not at all. Yet people came back. Restaurant cooks, retirees, nearby growers, and adults who remembered Walter's old varieties began turning down the eastern lane. They tasted cider at the table and argued over whether it was too tart. Several bought a second jug while arguing. The cottage became a destination smaller than success and larger than pity. Across the property line, Grant's first commercial load failed the buyer's pack-out standard. Hail marks and bitter rot pushed too much fruit into the rejected category. The buyer accepted part of the shipment at a reduced grade and warned that the next load had to meet contract specifications. Grant did not tell Noah. Calvin did, because Grant had ordered him to inspect the refrigeration unit after it began cycling every 6 minutes. "The compressor's tired," Calvin said at the roadside table. "Parts won't fix tired. Did you tell him? He asked me to clean the condenser." "That's not the same thing. I use those words." 2 nights later, Noah was closing the stand when a tractor came down the east lane, pulling 2 orchard bins. Grant drove. The bins were filled with apples too marked for the regional buyer and too sound to discard. He stopped beside the press room door and shut off the engine. "I need to use the press," he said. Noah looked at the bins, then at his brother. "No," he said. "You need to hire it." Grant stared at him from the tractor seat. "You want to charge me to press fruit from the family orchard. I charge everyone. You have 1 customer. I have 11. For pressing? For cider. That's not the same." "No. Pressing someone else's apples creates more cleaning, separate records, and the possibility you bring rot into my room. They're hail-marked Honeycrisp. The top ones are." Grant looked back at the bins as if the lower apples had behaved dishonestly. Noah switched on the exterior light. "I inspect before washing. Anything with active rot gets rejected. Your fruit stays separate from mine. You pay by finished gallon, plus containers if you want them. I'll bring containers. Food grade, they're orchard bins. For the juice," Grant got off the tractor. "I don't know. Drums, no mystery drums?" "They're not mystery drums." "What did they hold?" I would have to ask. "Then they're mysterious." Grant walked past him to the processing room door. Through the window, stainless surfaces shone beneath protected lights. Sanitation checklists hung beside the sink. The press occupied the center of the room, no longer a rusted outline beneath a tarp. "I sold you that frame for $110, Grant said. "You negotiated me up 10. I should have kept it. You would have scrapped it. That isn't the point. It's exactly the point." Grant turned. "What's your rate?" Noah told him. "For 2 bins? That's the rate. You're making more per gallon than the grower. I'm providing the labor and the equipment. I'm the grower." "Then you understand input costs?" Grant's face reddened. Noah waited for the explosion and hated the part of himself that wanted it. Grant had spent months explaining risk, compliance, and market value. Now those same words stood between him and 2 bins of apples. "When?" Grant asked. "Tuesday morning. The refrigeration unit may not last until Tuesday. I have my own harvest tomorrow and a restaurant shift tonight. This fruit needs processing. So did mine when you offered to bulldoze the cottage. That has nothing to do with this. It has everything to do with why I won't move my schedule because you drove over without calling." Grant stepped closer. "Are you enjoying this?" Noah considered lying. A little, he said. Less than I expected. Grant's mouth twitched with anger or reluctant humor. Tuesday is too late. I can give you 6 tomorrow evening if Ellen lets me switch shifts. Rush rate is 20% more. Of course it is. You could take them to Fenville. They're full. Noah had already called. Every press within driving distance was overwhelmed with storm fruit. Grant shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. 6 tomorrow, I'll send the terms. Terms. On paper. You like paper. Grant returned to the tractor without another word. Marisol reviewed Noah's rate sheet the next morning and drew a line through half his numbers. You forgot setup time, she said. It's included. You forgot shutdown cleaning. I do that anyway. Because his apples were in your room. I can't charge people for things I'm required to do. You can charge people for everything required to provide the service. She recalculated labor, water, cleaning supplies, equipment wear, and waste disposal. The resulting rate exceeded what Noah had quoted Grant. I can't change it after we agreed. No. You can learn on his money and fix the rate for the next person. There might not be a next person. Marisol glanced toward the road, where a pickup had slowed to read the Mercer Cottage orchard sign. There will be. Noah hired her and Luis for the evening pressing. Calvin came to monitor the machinery, billing only if something broke. That creates a poor incentive, Marisol told him. It creates confidence, Calvin said. It creates a man hoping for bearing failure. Grant arrived at 5:30 with sanitized food-grade drums, the 2 bins, and a printed copy of Noah's terms. He had signed at the bottom. Noah inspected the fruit before allowing the bins inside the work area. The first contained hail-marked apples with minor skin damage. The second had several pockets of bitter rot hidden below the top layer. This section goes, Noah said. Grant picked up an apple, cut around it, not for fresh cider, it's surface rot. Noah sliced the fruit. Brown tissue extended toward the core. Grant threw it into the reject crate. They sorted side by side until nearly a quarter of the second bin had been removed. Grant's irritation diminished with each apple because the evidence kept opening under Noah's knife. Consultant said it was controlled, he muttered. When? 2 weeks before the storm. Conditions changed. I know how disease works. Noah looked at him. Grant closed his eyes. Yes, I hear it. The processing began at 6. Grant expected the press to consume fruit at the speed of commercial packing equipment. Instead, he watched washing, grinding, loading, pressing, emptying, and cleaning occur in deliberate cycles. Each batch produced pumice that had to be shoveled into covered barrels. Can't you add more racks? He asked. No. Why? Because the screw has a limit and the frame has a limit. The frame is steel. The welds are older than both of us. Calvin pointed at him. Listen to the owner. The word quieted the room. Grant took the grinder handle when Luis's shoulder tired. He worked too fast, jammed the hopper, and spent 20 minutes helping Noah clear it. Apples don't care about urgency, Noah said. Did Marisol teach you that? Ellen. Sounds like Marisol. By midnight, the drums held clean, sweet cider. The Honeycrisp had softened the acidity Noah struggled with in his own early blend. Grant tasted from a paper cup. This is better than yours. It's sweeter. It's better. You're a valued customer. Your opinion is wrong. Grant drank again. What can I do with it? Sell it only if you meet the same licensing and labeling requirements I do. Or contract with me to bottle it under a processing agreement. How much? Noah told him. Grant laughed without humor. Every answer costs money. That's what you've been trying to explain to me. The following week, the regional buyer rejected a second shipment. The accepted fruit no longer covered packing and freight. Grant tried sorting more aggressively, which slowed the line and increased the labor costs. Then the refrigeration compressor failed on a warm afternoon with 300 packed cases inside. Calvin arranged temporary cooling using rented equipment. Grant paid emergency rates and slept in the packing barn for 2 nights. The buyer suspended the remaining deliveries. No lawsuit followed. No dramatic accusation exposed fraud. A representative sent a short email citing quality failures and contract provisions. Months of Grant's forecasts collapsed in 4 paragraphs. For one day, the orchard went quiet. Then apples kept ripening. Grant sold what he could through established wholesale channels at lower prices. Fruit with cosmetic damage had almost no value in those markets. He sent truckloads to the Fenville press, but its schedule filled. Hundreds of bushels remained. He came to the cottage with a spreadsheet. Noah had a table full of return jugs to sanitize, and little desire to see another spreadsheet. "This is available volume by variety," Grant said. "What do you want me to do with it? Process what you can, at my rates?" "At your rates." Noah studied the numbers. "I can't take all this. How much?" "If I run 6 days, hire a second shift, and nothing breaks, maybe a fifth." "A fifth?" "This is a cottage press, Grant. What would it take to increase capacity? Money, equipment, and a building designed for it, none of which arrives before the fruit spoils." Grant paced to the lower-level door. 2 neighboring growers already had bins waiting beside the lane. Their fruit had been scheduled days earlier. "You're pressing theirs before mine?" "They booked before you. I own the land around you." "And they called." Grant stared at him. "You're really going to make my trucks wait." "I'm going to honor the schedule." A muscle worked in Grant's jaw. Fine. It was not fine. Noah hired Luis, Calvin, and 2 experienced pickers for confirmed shifts at rates Marisol helped calculate. Marisol handled scheduling and records after her farm hours, invoicing as an independent supervisor. Grant began announcing overtime at the main orchard. On the same mornings, Noah had pressing crews booked. The first conflict came on a Saturday. Grant needed workers to repack a discounted wholesale order. Noah had 600 bushels scheduled through the cottage. "They're my employees," Grant told Marisol, "on weekdays. Saturday overtime was not posted until last night. I didn't know the order was coming. Noah confirmed these shifts Monday. I'll match his rate. They already committed." Grant called Noah. "You could release them. They aren't mine to release. You know what I mean." "Yes. You want me to cancel my work because you planned yours late. I am trying to save the farm. So am I." The sentence silenced both of them. In the end, Grant hired temporary workers for the repacking. Noah's crew reported at 6 as scheduled. Luis arrived with coffee. Calvin inspected the press before startup. Marisol assigned stations and posted break times. At 8, Grant's first truck joined the line beside the cottage. It waited behind a neighboring grower's battered flatbed. Grant stood near the Jonathan sign, checking his watch. Noah expected him to complain, but Denise came down from the farmhouse carrying biscuits wrapped in a towel and put one in his hand. "Waiting is not a medical emergency," she told him. "You drove here. I smelled biscuits. They came from your kitchen. I wanted one outside." Grant ate beside the truck while cider customers moved around him. Adults returned clean jugs and loaded apples into their cars. A lake house server picked up the restaurant's weekly order. Mrs. Dombrowski inspected the stand as if preparing a municipal report. The work was neither glamorous nor efficient. A hose coupling failed. One batch had to be held because a record was incomplete. The press overheated at noon, and Calvin shut it down for 40 minutes despite Grant's objections. Yet, by evening, Grant's fruit had become sealed jugs and refrigerated drums instead of waste. He paid the invoice. Noah used the processing income to cover payroll first, supplies second, and the cottage roof fund third. Nothing remained for him until the 4th week. Walter's plans had listed wages before equipment. Noah understood why now. The press drew attention, but people kept it operating. Near the end of harvest, Grant arrived alone with the final bin of Northern Spy. Frost silvered the grass. Noah was exhausted enough to dislike every apple individually. "No crew?" he asked. "I thought I'd help. This is booked work, I know. Put me on the invoice if you want." Noah handed him an apron. They washed fruit in silence. Grant worked more slowly than before. He checked each apple for rot without being reminded. "Mom says the furnace is making a noise," he said. "What kind?" She described it as judgmental. Calvin should hear it. He did. Heat exchangers cracked. "How much?" "Enough." They fed apples into the grinder. After a while, Grant said, "I thought you'd sell the cottage." Noah kept his hands on the sorting table. "When? Before we signed. I thought you'd take the parcel, wait a year, then sell it to me or someone adjacent. So the repairs wouldn't be your problem." "Yes." The honesty hurt less than the pantry conversation, because this time Grant was willing to remain present after saying it. "I thought giving you land made it fair," he continued. "I also thought you'd fail at living there, which made me feel safer about taking the productive blocks." "Safer how? If you failed too, then none of it meant Grandpa chose wrong." Noah looked at him. "Grandpa didn't choose the parcels," he said. "No. but he chose who he trusted with the work. The grinder turned between them. Grant lifted another apple and cut out a bruise. "I'm sorry," he said. Noah did not forgive him immediately. The story between them was too old and too useful to both men to disappear on command. Instead, he pushed the clean fruit toward Grant's side of the table. "Those go in the hopper," he said. Grant nodded. He stayed until shutdown. The last batch finished after midnight. Noah and Grant scrubbed the press, rinsed the floor, and hung the cloths to dry. Grant kept waiting to be told what came next. Noah let him wait long enough to understand that apology did not restore him to authority. "Sanitize the grinder," Noah said. Grant did it. When they shut off the lights, frost had hardened the ruts in the lane. Grant climbed into his truck, then lowered the window. "What do you need for the roof?" "Money? I deserve that." "Yes, I meant the full replacement." Noah tucked his hands under his arms. "Another season like this, maybe I can do it next year. Another season like this might kill both of us." "That too." Grant nodded. "Good night." He drove away without asking what his apology had purchased. It purchased nothing yet. That was what made it useful. The temporary roof held into December. Noah closed the press for winter, drained every line, and covered the machine with clean canvas. Processing income paid the crew, outstanding bills, Denise's loan, and part of the electrician's balance. The rest went into roofing and spring orchard expenses. His personal share amounted to less than he would have earned, working additional shifts at Lake House. Ellen considered this hilarious. "You work 2 jobs, so one job could lose less money," she said. "I own the job that lost money." Entrepreneurship. She kept his 4-night shifts through winter and added Mercer Cottage cider to 2 sauces. Each menu mention brought a few customers to the orchard on weekends until the last bottled batch sold. The cottage quieted. Without the grinder and wash pumps, Noah could hear wind moving beneath the temporary roof. He used his daylight hours to finish one upstairs bedroom. The walls were not straight, but they were insulated. He repaired the floor, painted it a soft gray, and hung white curtains Denise found boxed in the farmhouse attic. "They were in the cottage when I was young," she said. "How do you know?" "I washed them after Louise spilled coffee on one." "I was not there," Louise later insisted. "You were at the card table. Many people drank coffee." The finished room contained a bed, a lamp, and Walter's green mug on the windowsill. It was the first part of the cottage that looked like someone had chosen to live there, rather than failed to escape. In January, during a week when Lake Michigan sent cold through every seam in western Michigan, the farmhouse furnace made the judgmental noise Denise had described and stopped. Grant brought her to the cottage after dark. She entered carrying 2 suitcases, Walter's work jacket, and a ceramic pot containing a plant that looked dead. "You brought the plant?" Noah asked. "It's dormant, it's brown, it has boundaries." The furnace company could not replace the cracked heat exchanger for 6 days. Grant offered his Grand Rapids apartment, but Denise refused because his sofa was designed for people without bones. Noah gave her the finished bedroom. "You sleep there," she said. "I have a cot." "Where?" He pointed toward the lower stairs. "You cannot sleep in a cider room. The press is closed and covered. Everything's dry. I'm not taking your bed. Then you can sleep beside the press." She went upstairs. Noah set his cot near the stone wall, 6 feet from the silent machine. The room smelled faintly of apples, despite repeated cleaning. Pipes ticked overhead. The arrangement was uncomfortable but warm, and the press made a better roommate than several people he had rented beside. Denise lived at the cottage for 6 nights. She woke early and made coffee before Noah returned from Lake House. She watched Luis and Calvin come through the lower door to repair pruning tools at the winter bench. Noah had hired them for 2 half-days each week, exactly as Walter's plan suggested. The work was modest, replacing crate slats, sharpening saws, mending picking bags, building new press racks. It gave Noah equipment ready for spring and gave them paid hours during the orchard's quietest stretch. Marisol came on Thursdays to review payroll. The first time Denise saw her, she looked at the ledger, then at Noah. "You employ Marisol? 6 hours a week," Marisol corrected him. "He purchases 6 hours of management because employing me would involve benefits he cannot afford." "She enjoys saying that," Noah told Denise. "I enjoy accuracy." Denise sat at the kitchen table while they calculated withholding, supplies, and spring labor. She saw Noah reduce his own planned draw before touching anyone else's pay. She saw him argue with Marisol over the price of replacement cloth and lose. She saw invoices stacked beside Walter's plans, each expense tied to work rather than hope. On the fourth night, she unfolded the orchard map across the table. Walter's notes filled the margins. Names appeared beside tasks and ideas. Marisol, crew hours. Calvin, press frame. Louis Snow's rootstock. Ask Noah about water. Denise ran her finger beside each name. He didn't leave you this, she said. Noah looked up from a crate invoice. The family left me the parcel. No, I mean, he didn't make it for you alone. No. She studied the plans again. I kept thinking Walter had chosen the cottage as your share. That if it was bad, it meant he valued you badly. Then when the division was ours, I used that confusion because it made me feel less responsible. Noah set down his pen. I told myself, you liked broken things, she said. I like some broken things. You shouldn't have to be one of them. The words might once have opened him. Now they found a place that had already begun repairing itself. You gave me the room with no furnace, he said. Yes. You knew about the estimate. Yes. You let Grant call it practical. I did. He waited. Denise's eyes shone, but she did not ask tears to do the work. I'm sorry, she said. Noah nodded. I know. It was not complete forgiveness. It was enough truth to live beside for 6 nights. When the farmhouse furnace was replaced, Denise went home. She left Walter's jacket hanging by the cottage door. Noah carried it back to her. You decided it was yours, he said. I changed my mind. You're allowed to keep something. So are you. She pushed the jacket into his arms and closed the farmhouse door before he could argue. Spring brought no miracle. It brought pruning invoices, fuel costs, 2 pumps needing seals, and blossoms vulnerable to cold. Noah restored the orchard by the stages Walter had drawn, but he changed the order when reality required it. 31 managed trees became 84. 84 became 2 small blocks with reliable records and harvest schedules. He left trees unworked when he could not afford to manage them properly. That restraint became one of the operation's strengths. The orchard began producing enough varieties to blend cider across the season. Early sharp fruit gave structure. Golden russet added sweetness. Baldwin brought body after storage. Northern Spy contributed acid late in the year. Noah learned that the old block's uneven ripening, once treated as inefficiency, allowed a small crew and small press to keep working without being overwhelmed by one enormous harvest. The orchard did not make him rich. It paid for a permanent roof in the 2nd year. The full replacement required a loan, restaurant shifts, and a summer in which Noah bought no furniture. It paid steady seasonal wages and the winter repair hours Walter had imagined. It paid for safe stairs, finished rooms above, washable walls below, and a roadside shed with a broad roof. Mrs. Dombrowski inspected the shed and declared the cash slot unreliable. It locks, Noah said. Anything locks until a person wants in. You ran a boarding house. I understand people. He reinforced it. Grant's recovery was less graceful. The failed regional contract left him with debts the lower wholesale market could not cover. He sold 11 acres at the southern edge to a neighboring grower. The sale hurt him more than he admitted. He avoided that road for months after the new boundary stakes appeared. He kept the packing barn, equipment, and 30 acres. Then he asked Marisol to return to field operations. She made him put the authority in writing. If weather makes a schedule unsafe, I stop it, she said. If application timing is wrong for a block, we separate passes. If you promise volume without asking me, volume becomes your hobby. You rehearsed this, Grant said. For 2 years. He agreed. The orchard became smaller and more stable. Grant replaced the failed refrigeration system with used equipment he could actually pay for. He stopped describing crew time as a flexible input around Marisol. When Noah warned him about a drainage problem, Grant checked before arguing. Not always, but often enough to notice. Their relationship changed through transactions that would have looked meaningless to anyone else. Grant returned the utility trailer early. Noah processed his fruit without adding a resentment surcharge. Grant asked before borrowing the forklift. Noah called before criticizing a spray schedule. They still fought. One argument over shared lane maintenance lasted 9 days and required Denise to leave both of them voicemails containing language she denied knowing. But Grant no longer mistook disagreement for proof that Noah wanted him ruined, and Noah stopped treating every imperfect decision as evidence Grant had learned nothing. On the fourth harvest after Walter's death, Noah finished the cottage entryway. He framed the original plans behind glass. The first sheet showed the cottage rooms as Walter had measured them. The orchard map hung beside it, worn at the folds, colored dots fading. The gravity flow drawing occupied the center. Below them, Noah mounted a new sheet. It showed the system as it actually existed: the restored blocks, winter bench, processing room, roadside shed, drainage improvements, employee storage, and a break area Walter had never drawn. Noah added names where work and knowledge belonged. Some lines followed Walter's plans, others crossed them, corrected them, or extended beyond the original page. At the first harvest supper, held inside the finished cottage, the table ran from the kitchen into the front room. Luis brought rice and slow-cooked pork. Marisol brought a salad no one touched until she began serving it onto people's plates. Calvin brought tools, claiming someone would need them. Ellen carried 2 pies and threatened anyone who asked whether the apples were local. Denise sat beneath the framed plans wearing Walter's jacket. Grant arrived late because a truck belt broke, but he called first and brought the damaged belt for Calvin to inspect after dinner. Workers, neighbors, restaurant staff, and nearby growers filled the restored rooms. Wet boots crowded the porch. Conversation moved through the house with the warmth of the new furnace. Below them, the press stood cleaned and ready for morning. Noah had imagined giving a speech. Instead, when the plates were cleared, he stood with Walter's green mug in his hand and forgot every sentence. He looked at the framed papers. "You brought me these plans," he said to Luis, Marisol, and Calvin. "I thought that was when this place changed." Luis shook his head. "We brought paper. That paper kept me here." "No." Luis pointed around the room. "Walter left the plan in people. Paper only helped you ask." Noah looked at Marisol, who had made him price labor before dreams. At Calvin, who had taught old structures to accept improvement slowly. At Ellen, who made affection obey bookkeeping. At Denise and Grant, neither forgiven cheaply nor lost completely. Then he looked at the new drawing beneath Walter's originals. For years, Noah had believed inheritance was the family's final estimate of what a person deserved. The farmhouse for one. Productive land for another. Repairs for the one least likely to protest. But the cottage no longer felt like the thing they had left him. It felt like the place where people had chosen to return. Noah set Walter's green mug on the table and opened the front door for the next guest.